It just amazes me. It really does. It amazes me the stunning, you could say it's almost a skill. It's almost an art form at this point. The ability of the GOP to literally snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, something Michael Knowles often says, which is just so true. I mean, you're looking at a year where social conservatism is taking these massive victories, and what do the Republican Party do, right? They just have to try to find a way to screw it up. I mean, they just have to try to find a way to screw it up. You know, in an atmosphere where it is so favorable to Republicans, right? All we have to do is like they're basically lighting it up for us. All we have to do is swing the bat. It's gonna be a home run, okay? Grand slam. Somehow the Republican Party still finds a way to betray you. It doesn't make any sense. It's frankly mind-boggling, and it's mind-boggling that there are so many people who will campaign on the concept of, number one, of social conservatism, and even number two, of the concept of states' rights, right? Because we're actually going to get into this stream how this totally contradicts even like the overused, pretentious at this point Republican talking points about small government states' rights. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But anyways, guys, as you guys may have heard by now today, the House voted to codify same-sex marriage into law, which we obviously expected to happen, right? We expected that every Democrat was going to vote for this. That's not the main thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about the fact that 47 House Republicans voted to write same-sex marriage into law. Okay, we need to talk about this. We absolutely need to discuss this. Again, what is the point even of voting Republican at this point? Okay, now, here's the thing I will say, okay, because obviously we oppose same-sex marriage as a concept. We believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, but it's actually worse than that. It's actually worse than that because even for the Republicans who are not the best social conservatives, they're still gaslighting you and they're still lying to their voters. And really the point I want to start on is not necessarily marriage itself, but really this, which is the concept of like states' rights, right? The concept of states' rights in small government. This is something that all the time you hear the kind of generic wing of the GOP constantly harp on when it comes to something like big tech. Oh, we can't go after big tech because that would be big government. That'd be an infringement on the free market, right? A lot of the kind of softcore Republican response to the overturning of Roe v. Wade this is good because it protects states' rights and it leaves the issue back to the states. Now, we obviously disagree with that. Why do we disagree with that? We disagree with that because we believe that abortion should be a matter that is decided federally, and we believe there should be a federal ban on abortion. Quite frankly, I feel the same way about marriage, right? I feel the same way about marriage, but even like with that not in mind, what happened to the concept of states' rights? You know what I mean? Like what the kind of cope, you could say, the cope conservative position on same-sex marriage, the kind of fence-riding position historically was always that it should be an issue left to the states. Why? Because we are principled conservatives, right? And it is principled conservatism. Principled conservatives believe in the concept of states' rights. Well, I guess they believe in the concept of states' rights or small government or whatever, or a reduced power of the federal government. You notice this, they only use that as an excuse whenever we want to do something effective, right? Whenever we want to say, well, let's have the government step in to protect conservatism. Let's have the government step in to fix our culture on a cultural issue, or go after big tech, go after the woke corporations, or go after whatever it is. That's the excuse you get. But suddenly to the principled conservatives, again, these are the people who are like, we're, defending conservatism, we're vanguarding conservatism away from the guards of populism or whatever. I guess states' rights only matter when it's an excuse not to help the right. Right? Because when it comes to siding with the liberals on the issue of gay marriage, suddenly then states' rights aren't a thing. Suddenly then we don't have this opinion anymore of I think marriage should be a thing left to the states, or even the further libertarian talking point, which is I don't think the government should be involved in marriage at all, right? These are kind of the get out points that it's again, I don't necessarily like these opinions. I think that, again, this should be a federal issue that's decided. Marriage is between a man and a woman, but, at least back then, they used to use the get out talking point of small government. It's not the government's business. Well, I don't know what the excuse even is now. And what you really get to fundamentally at the core of this is simply the fact that the Republican establishment not only is full of people who are just wrong ideologically, right? It's not just that they're neocons in principle or whatever, because even when you would think that maybe that sort of libertarian states' rights, small government view would actually come through in our favor for once, Even then, what do? Instead, they go inside with the liberals and totally throw out these concepts. And so it's not even necessarily that they have a wrong political philosophy. It's also that it's even worse because they further gaslight you and lie to you about that political philosophy. Okay, it's absolutely sad. It's absolutely pathetic. What we see here. So that was 25% of the House GOP. Sad. No, seriously. Seriously. You know, what happened to small government? What happened to small government? You know, what happened to states' rights? What happened to all these ideas? You know, I hate this libertarian idea that has taken over Republicans. I don't think it's libertarian at all. It's actually not libertarian. That's what I want to emphasize. It's not libertarian because the libertarian viewpoint of it, and again, I'm no fan of libertarianism, but let's understand this. Let's understand it's just liberal. It's not libertarian. This is nothing about freedom or whatever. It's literally just liberal because the libertarian position would be decentralization, right? This should be an issue left to the states, kind of the same thing they say on abortion. That would be the federalist libertarian position. Or even further, going further than that, the truly libertarian take would be that marriage should be a private institution, right? You always hear people say, well, I just think the government should get out of marriage. Again, I really don't agree with that. But understand, that's the libertarian idea. This is just liberal. This is just liberal. There's nothing libertarian, like, truly about this. Now, you are being gaslighted by a lot of different people. But anyways, let's actually go through the Republicans who voted for this, and you'll find that this is absolutely ridiculous. So 47 Republicans back it, such as GOP leadership conference chair Elise Stefanik. Okay, Elise Stefanik, who I believe Trump actually endorsed for that position. And there's a lot of talk right now, by the way, of Elise Stefanik maybe being Trump's vice president in 2024, vice presidential pick. Yeah, we'll take a look at that, right? How's that going? Which is crazy. Look at this. Even Kevin McCarthy voted no on it, right? Kevin McCarthy gets it. But Elise Stefanik, right, takes the side of the liberals on this. Tom Emmer. This is the real shock, though, I think I want to point out. Other notable yeses included Representative Liz Cheney from Wyoming and House Freedom Caucus Chair Scott Perry. Now, Liz Cheney, you know, that's not entirely unexpected. Okay, we'll say that. That's not entirely unexpected. We get it. But Scott Perry, someone who's supposed to be like MAGA. Scott Perry, who's really supposed to be one of like the top 5 to 10 Republicans in the entire House, literally voted just now to codify same-sex marriage. And you know who did not vote for it, on the other hand? Kevin McCarthy did not vote for that. And even Chris Smith, right? Chris Smith, who I believe actually voted for impeachment, if I'm not mistaken. Chris Smith, up in New Jersey, the guy that Mike Crispy tried to primary, literally one of the biggest rhinos, literally one of the biggest neocons, like, in the entire Republican Party, okay, at this point. Free trade, globalist, red flag laws, literally everything you don't like. Even Chris Smith. And by the way, this guy, Chris Smith, has been in the House for like 40 years or something, okay? Truly like the definition caricature of an old Bush Republican. Chris Smith voted no on this. Meanwhile, Freedom Caucus Chair, right? This is supposed to be MAGA. This is supposed to be like the America First wing of the party. Freedom Caucus Chair Scott Perry voted to the left of Kevin McCarthy and Chris Smith. What's going on here? Okay. And what's going on here? And, you know, obviously, like I said, I explained how it's not truly even libertarian to support this, but really, we will admit this. What is truly going on here is that you are watching the leftovers of the Tea Party still in action is what it is. Okay. This is, and look, because I understand the Tea Party generally is something that kind of us as the harder right, the America First wing of the right, but it's a general consensus that the Tea Party was a good thing. Right, we generally see it as, well, the Tea Party was like an improvement from what the Republican Party was before. And like, you know, I do believe that to an extent, right? I definitely think the Tea Party was an improvement from what the Republican Party was before. But it's also important to truly point out the serious and severe downsides of the Tea Party as a movement. And this is one such example of this. Okay, this is an example of the fact, and that is the scourge, the socially liberal scourge that the Libertarian Tea Party actually left on the Republican Party, okay? Because you notice this, and this is why you have people like Scott Perry. This is why you have, you know, Tea Party conservatives. They're supposed to be the more far-right people. This is why you have people like Scott Perry voting to the left of people like Chris Smith, who literally descend from like the Bush just George Bush Republicans through and through. Because like George H.W. Bush, right? These people were anti-same-sex marriage, and at best they thought it was an issue that should be left to the states. And it's ironic to an extent, actually, that so many of the neocons like Chris Smith actually believe this, and they're actually principally more socially conservative, at least. Now, on other issues, not really, but they're actually principally more socially conservative and culturally conservative than the people who grew out of the Tea Party, and that's just sad. And truly, I think this ought to be an example. I mean, look, I generally like the Tea Party, okay? I don't consider myself Tea Party. I generally could see them as like allies, you know what I mean? And a lot of people who grew out of the Tea Party did become legitimate allies for our cause, right? I think Paul Gosar, for instance, is an example. He was elected, 2010? So like that first Tea Party wave, and there's a lot of great Tea Party people who have now come over to our side. Matt Gaetz, right, was kind of a Tea Party guy at first. Now he's like America First. But I think this really makes the case that we need to kind of push for the end of that Tea Party, okay? And what you're going to get is kind of a distinction. Who's going to come over truly to America First, and who's going to basically join this just dead socially liberal wing of the Republican Party, because we have to acknowledge this. And this is why the remnants of that old Tea Party, they have to go. Okay, they have to go. It served its purpose. We got some relatively better people in Congress. Well, now it's time for those people to reject this supposed libertarianism, which it really isn't, but still, for the true cause of true conservatism, the true cause of America First, and this is true. Okay? So, here you have it. I'm drinking water out of a wine glass, by the way. Isn't this so eloquent? Yes. That is good water. Okay, truly. But anyways, all right, let's keep reading this article here, folks. The utter state of this. Can't believe it. Scott Perry, what are you doing? This is true. All right, if gay couples want to be as happily or miserably married as straight couples, more power to them. Trust me, I've tried it more than once, said Representative Nancy Mace, Republican out of South Carolina. Another yes tweeted immediately after the vote. Seriously? This is like the worst. So not only is she defending same-sex marriage, but look at the context in which she's defending it. She's literally like defending it in the context of the fact that, first of all, right, we believe in the modernist stance of marriage. Not that marriage is some sacred covenant between a man and a woman and God. No. We're first of all taking the secular view of marriage. Oh, marriage was miserable. Marriage was like, oh, you don't want to get married, dude. So here you have her not only endorsing same-sex marriage, but just counter-signaling and bashing the sanctity of marriage in general by saying, well, they want to just be miserably married as straight couples. More power to them. And then says, trust me, I've tried it more than once. Okay, so she's bashing marriage and celebrating her own divorce in the process of voting for same-sex marriage. The utter state of this, okay, the utter state of our party. We're supposed to be the party of family, of marriage, of children, this and that. And here you have Nancy Mace. Like, this is literally the worst way she could have said it. And this is so true, okay? Shane Keena for the $5. Thank you very much, Shane. God bless you. He says, the Tea Party is like the Empire State Building. Overplayed. MAGA is the Twin Towers. You look for the Twin Towers. Shane, what did you mean by that? What did you mean by that? I I don't understand. Okay, thank you very much, Shane. Thank you very much. It's an interesting analogy, truly, but thank you very much for the comment in the super chat. All right. So we continue here. It's unclear if the Senate will take up the legislation as Democratic leaders remain non-committal on Tuesday. Dick Durbin said he would personally support putting it on the floor, but question whether there's enough time on the calendar with the Senate set to go into extended recess. Let's go. Okay. White pill. The Senate is going to stop the failures of the House GOP. Okay. We're going to look at everything we can do. All right. Well, looks like it's not happening anytime soon. Attitudes concerning same-sex marriage have shifted rapidly in recent years. Republicans have largely moved on from their adamant opposition to same-sex marriage and cultural wars. A record 71% of people in the U.S. support gay marriage, according to a June poll from Gallup. Yeah. And, it's just crazy how, many of like the boomers and stuff, many of the people who come to us like, what is your problem with same-sex marriage? It's just crazy because like 5 to 6 years ago, these people have the same stance as us, and their stance has radically flipped. And it hasn't just flipped. You notice how many Republicans and conservatives and libertarians and all these people, you notice how they are actually like now like outright hostile towards people who have the view that they had 5 years ago. I mean, it's ridiculous. They do all these things about freedom, this and that, The American populace for $2 says Trump would have voted for it, to be honest. Yeah, and that's sad too. It's a sad reality. But you do have to recognize, right, that the descendants of Trump's movement within like the America First caucus of the GOP, look at where they all voted, right? So where it is admittedly a shortcoming that Trump is weak on certain social issues, it's also important to point out that the sort of like Christian nationalists, as they call them, wing of the Republican Party, it did not grow out of the Tea Party. It truly grew out of the Trump revolution. And so that's also important to understand, so this is true. 71%, and it's just so funny because the fact that you have conservatives out there that don't understand that that's a bad thing. They're like, well, what's wrong with that? You know what I mean? And the fact that it's actually legitimately hard for some people to comprehend why we support marriage between a man and a woman, which is actually just ridiculous. It's insane to think about because how can you call the left groomers? How can you look at everything going on with the LGBT agenda today that people say they're so against, this whole like LARP of being like so against pedophilia and grooming and all this. And yet when we stand here and say, yes, that's so true, which is why we have to roll back the clock on this movement genuinely and generally, all of a sudden it's like, bro, well, what do you mean by that? That's kind of an overreach. That's so far, dude. Actually, it's a good thing. I'm all for states' rights. But it's a good thing that the Republicans voted against states' rights to codify the socially liberal concept of same-sex marriage. I mean, seriously? So Christopher says, times like these. Thank you for the 5. He says, times like these, I don't care about democracy. It has failed us over and over again. Establish our American Caesar now. Hey, you know what? Now, I'm not going to comment on that officially, but I will say it is something I have thought about too. I mean, truly, it is. It is. This is true. So, all right. Well, there you have this. Okay. We've talked about this. We talk about this a lot on the channel, but it's insane. I want to know how many of these people like. I don't think many, but I want to know how many of them, would sign things like the APP pledge, right? The big family pledge, they'll campaign on the concept of family and like traditional values, this and that. And it's just the greatest gaslighting we've ever seen. And even for those who will campaign on like more constitution, what's constitutional about this? Well, what's federalist about this? What's limited government or states' rights about federalizing same-sex marriage? I thought this is an issue that's supposed to be left to the states. So it's just ridiculous. It's just gaslighting on all fronts. Like there's nothing here to it. There's nothing here to it except the fact that they literally are just liberals. There's nothing libertarian. There's certainly nothing conservative about it. It's just downright liberal. It's just downright It's truly what we are. States' rights is code for stuff that I like. No, exactly. It's like, well, when it comes to doing like conservative things, no, we have to respect federalism, we have to respect states' rights. But when it comes to helping the liberals to federalize same-sex marriage, actually that's who cares? I don't know what states' rights, what are those? So true. And this really gets to the point of it, which is that, we always talk about, we kind of debate these ideas of like small government, limited government, freedom, states' rights, federalism, all these things. I mean, truly, I'm at the point right now, I don't even think we should have to debate these with the Republican establishment. We really want because I think it's important to understand that, like, as much as they throw out these excuses, whenever we want to do culture warrior things, whenever they throw out these excuses of like freedom, limited government, small government, states' rights, federalism, whatever, they don't actually believe it. Okay, they don't actually believe it at all. Okay, let's just go through some examples of this. Let's start with like fiscal responsibility. Number one, when we say, hey, I think we have a birth rate problem in this country. People aren't having enough kids. It's actually an existential crisis in our country. Maybe we should look at some economic policies or economic incentives that promote people having kids. What's the excuse we get? We say, well, that goes against fiscal responsibility. That goes against like conservative free market economics. Yet on the other hand, I mean, look at the Republican Party. has voted for like an insane amount of, I mean, half the debt, half the national debt we have is the responsibility of the Republican Party. So where's the fiscal responsibility in that? You don't hear them crying fiscal responsibility when it comes to all the foreign aid we give to Ukraine or spending on this, spending on that, all these stimulus packages. It's only when we propose policies that would actually help conservatives, that would actually help like the real Americans that we want to help. It's only when it comes down to that suddenly you hear this concept of like fiscal responsibility basically invented out of thin air. You know what I mean? And I think that's the mistake we make. That's the mistake we make on like the populist right too often is we take their arguments of like fiscal responsibility and small government too much at face value, right? We're like, well, I don't, here's another example. It's like, I don't believe in the concept of a small government. I believe in the concept of an effective government. You hear this all the time. We kind of debate this. Well, what actually is the utility of small government? What's the point of that? What's the point of even debating that with them? Because they don't actually believe in the concept of small government, right? When they give money to fund the military industrial complex and the national security state and they do all of that, there's nothing small government about that. They don't believe in small government at all. They clearly, as you can see, another example of this, they don't believe in small government. They don't believe in states' rights or limited power of the federal government. It's not that at all. It's only like when we, again, want to do something effective, something that actually would help us, only then do they suddenly pretend like they believe in small government, right? So when we say something like, well, there is like institutional warfare going on in our country, and maybe the government really ought to step in and like do something about the woke corporations and really the problem with all of like the mass Marxist infiltration of our institutions. Maybe we should step in and do something about this. Maybe we should go after woke corporations. We should penalize them for pushing this stuff on our kids and our culture, et cetera, right? Only then suddenly are they like, well, I think that's a little bit of an overreach. Oh, regulating big tech? I think that's a little bit of an overreach. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's just pure gaslighting. It all is all it is. So, Surfing Cowboy says, with no sodomy laws, it actually isn't illegal. The real debate is whether the government should recognize the union as equal to a normal marriage. Well, yeah, and I think the answer is that the government shouldn't. Okay, the government shouldn't. Because, I don't have any problem with having policies that reflect, the morality and the culture historically of America, right? And we have policies like this all the time, and really, I think it's important to understand historically, I mean, when we say that's against the Constitution, that's against the founders, no, historically, this is how like these questions were understood in American society. I mean, truly they were, For most of American history, marriage was recognized by law by being between a man and a woman, largely because that's how the culture understood it, right? Like this whole, so you can talk about the founding fathers all you want, and the same thing is true of prayer, right? Of public prayer, of government-sponsored prayer in schools, all this stuff like that. And so, I really am of the opinion that the government ought to recognize absolute truths, which we do with all sorts of other things. We do with murder, obviously. We're trying to get there with abortion, right? And we talk all the time. What is a woman? What is a woman this? Well, why don't we talk? Well, if men are different than women, then truly the utility of marriage ought to be something that recognizes both of those things. George Floyd Conservative. What's up, George Floyd Conservative? He says, what a sad day for Republicans today was. Only 25% of the party of personal rights and small government voted for this piece of legislation. Okay, thank you for the super chats, George Floyd Conservative. If it is codified, can SCOTUS still overturn it? I guess hypothetically they could say that that's unconstitutional, but I think the chances of that are probably far less from happening, right? So thank you, Ian Kennedy, for the $2. So this is the case, You'll find that the principled conservatives are largely actually the most unprincipled people, I mean, potentially in the world, It's only fiscal responsibility when and really you get down to this. I mean, really all they are is controlled opposition. Okay. And even if they're not consciously trying to be that, which many of them are, it's just still absolutely true. Because are you really going to look me in the eyes and tell me that the Republican Party believes in small government? No, they don't. They don't believe in it at all, And like I said, I'm tired of the populist right even debate. We really ought to look these people in the face and say, shut the heck up, because you don't even believe that. Let me look at you. You're lying. You're lying through your teeth. You don't believe that at all. Okay? I don't want to hear any of this crap about small government when, again, you're voting to send more money to Ukraine than we spent in the entire first year of the Iraq war. Okay, shout out to Jackson for actually giving me that number earlier today, okay? So don't give me that talk when you voted for that. You know, when you do all these things that are big government, fiscally irresponsible, you're partly responsible, half responsible for the national debt we have today. Don't turn around to me and suddenly say, well, we can't do that because of the small government, government principles, whatever it is, okay? This is ridiculous. GOP is the kamikazes of politics. So true. They're actually the friendly fire of politics. Okay, they're the boomerang of politics. They just swing around and just hit themselves in the face every single time. Brian Walker says the legalization of gay marriage in 2015 caused all this LGBT stuff now. So true. Thanks, shout out Brian Walker. Let's go. King, what a Chad. Okay. He looks like an older fellow too, which we appreciate that a lot. We appreciate that a lot because there's this problem, we always call it like the boomer way of thought. But honestly, I've been kind of realizing this more and more too. I don't think it's an age thing. It truly is a state of mind thing because you have all these young conservatives, the Zoomers, who will take all these just cringe internships for establishment orgs and they just beg for a seat at the table of the establishment. And you have 50-year-old people who truly get it too. It truly is a state of mind thing. But shout out Brian, thank you for the chat. This is true. Actually, I want to go over that too. I know we've read this article on stream before, but I think this is a good time truly to revisit my Chronicles article. I kind of predicted this, did I not? Did I not kind of predict this? Okay, I published this back in March in Chronicles magazine, which was an honor. Shout out to Chronicles. We love Chronicles magazine. The true beacon of conservatism in print and magazine, not the National Review. Okay, the National Review is cringe, but let's talk about this a little bit, okay? I'm gonna read my own article on stream. What a Chad move, what a Sigma male move. Okay, anyways, so as Pat Buchanan warned us back in 2001, the only way the gay rights movement can succeed in making society accept homosexuality as natural, normal, moral, and healthy is to first de-Christianize that society, and they are making headway. That was the warning of Pat Buchanan. His point was clear. There could be no coexistence between a traditional, biblically guided America and surging liberal cultural movements. The former would necessarily be sacrificed for the latter. And I think we understand this, right? There definitely is a strong correlation between the rising tide of liberalism in America and the secularization, right? The de-Christianization of America. And we understand that this is something that they absolutely needed to do first, right? Is because obviously a society historically in America that was austerely Christian and austerely religious would never buy this. So what do? They do three things, truly. Number one is that they basically just, kind of bash Christianity, basically just try to make society more atheist outright, right? So atheism rises, they promote reason and logic and all these things, anti-religious, anti-Christian movements, okay? But then number two, what they also do, right, is they kind of neuter Christianity. Okay, so the first thing is they kind of take it out of public life. And so the taking prayer out of schools, prayer out of public institutions, this honestly went a long way because it truly was the first step into retreating what Christianity was still left in America into private life. Now it's away from government, it's away from civil institutions. And then thirdly, what happens is it's taken away from politics, right? We take the Christianity out of our own politics, okay? And nowadays, the kind of Christian conservative right, even in America, seems to have a lot of ideas that historically Christians in America would have never subscribed to. One of which being that separation of church and state literally means that Christians can never actually want their views imposed in politics, which is just absolutely not true. It's never what it was meant to mean, right? For all of American history up until about let's be honest, up until 2008, 2010, 2012, maybe, it was generally understood that yes, it is perfectly okay for, your Christianity to guide your political views. And that should translate on social issues like abortion, same-sex marriage, promiscuity, morality, all of these different things. And that's how historically Christians in America would have always understood it. But now, of course, we're taught, separation of church and state. You know what I mean? So my Christianity shouldn't guide my politics. It shouldn't reflect in my social views, okay? So that's kind of the psyop, right? It's kind of this multi-layered psyop. On one hand, they just make people less Christian, right? They just make people more atheists, more agnostics, more other religions out of the American people. Number two, they, take Christianity, for those who are Christian, they convince them to move away from that Christianity when it translates to their politics. And then you can argue, number three, what they also do is they liberalize Christianity, right? They push progressive Christianity, all of these things. And that's the multi-layered psyop that forms the prerequisite for cultural liberalism in America. Okay, this is true. So anyways, how correct was he? The answer isn't too hard to find. From 2009 to 2019, the number of American adults who identify as Christian dropped 12 percentage points to 65% from 77%, which we talked about. Again, there's just less Christians in America now. More people becoming atheists, more people becoming agnostic, secular, etc. In 2021, Gallup reported that American approval for same-sex marriage reached 70% for the first time. So obviously you do see this correlation, right? It used to be 30% approval for same-sex marriage, 70% disapprove. That was in 1997, okay? We're not talking about 1870 or something, or even like 1950. We're talking about 1997, okay? Probably like 40 to 50% of the audience watching this stream was born when this was the opinion. Only 30% of America approved of same-sex marriage, okay? But this leaves a gap in our understanding, right? Because Christianity, on the surface, you think this doesn't add up. Because if we're saying, well, it's because of the de-Christianization of America, sure, America has de-Christianized, right? 12%. But 40% on the flip side for the support of same-sex marriage, like where does that come from? And so what I really said in this article, and it's so true, and these words ring so true today, it says the answer to this question lies in the failure of Americans' vanguards of tradition, that is both the churches and the conservative movement, truly to show an ounce of moral courage, right? That's the problem here, right? It's not just the gay takeover necessarily of just American society and conservatives are loose. No, they're subverting and co-opting, as you can see from the vote today, literally our own movement, our own party, and this is true, okay? And so I kind of go through the psyop in this process, right? So both Christians and conservatives, of whom there's obviously a strong overlap, were once ardent defenders of marriage in America. That has now changed. Many American churches now skirt around the question of homosexuality. Some even embrace it. In 2012, Episcopal churches, and here's an example. Here's an example of exactly what you're seeing. So you have churches, okay, offering rights to recognize homosexual relationships, same-sex unions, right? You have just very progressive churches like the Unitarian Universalists flying the rainbow flags and stuff like that. But even within the conservative institutions, even stronger than the church, right? So that's number one. Not only do they take people away from the church, but for those who they can't fully take away, what do they do to the church instead, right? They subvert it. This is true. It's important we understand this, okay? But you even look at this, and admittedly, Donald Trump is partially to blame for this because, even then he said, I'm just for traditional marriage back in 2015. Basically, every single 2016 Republican candidate was, and this is important to understand too, people act like we're crazy. We got a member, hold on. Garrett Chan, new member, thank you very much. Thank you very much, shout out Garrett Chan, for becoming a member. Appreciate the support. God bless you. So, again, this is what, it's just funny. It's just crazy how it shows you how fast things truly can move. Once the slippery slope, once that domino theory is out, once that cat is out of the bag, because just the knee-jerk hostile reaction you'll get from other people on the right, not even from the left, the people that you get from people on the right for opposing same-sex marriage. It's like, look at this. Back in 2016, basically every single Republican candidate said, marriage is between a man and a woman. And then look where we are now. We're now at the point where you'll actually get hostile opposition for believing that marriage between a man and a woman. Okay, so anyways, back in 2016, then Republican nominee Trump would wave a rainbow LGBTs for Trump flag at a Colorado rally. This was historically unprecedented. And then 5 years later, look where we are. You have the Trump campaign selling LGBT merch, basically. And it's, I'll be honest, this is just one way. This is one of the few ways in which I think we arguably ended up worse because of, the Trump movement. Now, to be fair to Trump and to be fair to his movement, I don't really think we would have been maybe any better with like Ted Cruz or whatever. I think we'd be in the same place. But regardless, this is important to point out. If one genuine criticism of the Trump era could be, we really retreated too much on this issue of, sexuality and morality and this stuff like that, then perhaps right? This is the one thing maybe you'd hope. Well, if the Republican Party is just trying to erase Trumpism, they're trying to erase the legacy of Trump because they're neocons, because they're anti-Trump, they hate Trump. You would think, okay, well, maybe the Republican Party, maybe the one silver lining is they'll roll back the clock, maybe on the question of same-sex marriage, of LGBT. Nope, actually, they've just gotten stronger on it. Now you have the RNC Pride Coalition, okay, that Ronna McDaniel has formed with the log cabin Republicans, okay, and she said about this, conservatives in log cabin, this was last year, this was last November, so you see where this is getting now. Conservatives in log cabin don't just share our vision for a free, secure, and prosperous America, they enrich it by adding unique perspectives to our party and recruiting even more diverse candidates and supporters to join our cause. While Republicans wrap themselves in rainbow flags, the left is pushing the envelope even further. One would question, right, what is the actual political utility of this? Yet this is the new normal in American conservatism. So, with that being understood, right, because we've been sold this concept for so long, when it comes to this question of basically, well, it's the Big Tent theory, right? Big Tent theory of, anyone can be a conservative, anyone can be a Republican. What's your problem with this? Well, I think the problem with this is that, sure, anyone hypothetically can vote for our ideas, but it does matter what ideas we stand for. And truly, the inheritance of the conservative movement is conservatives, right? You know what I mean? Yes, I suppose some like liberal Democrat or centrist can caucus with the conservative cause, but who does this movement truly belong to? Does it belong to the LGBT activists or does it belong to the Christian conservatives? Who truly should, in theory, have the inheritance to the conservative movement? Who built the conservative movement? Was the conservative movement built by these people? Was it built by Christians and conservatives? Who donates to the Republican Party? Who has built the infrastructure historically around this stuff? Who supports it? Who forms the backbone of this movement? And shouldn't that be the people we care about the most? And so let's see what's happening to the backbone of historically in the conservative movement. Okay. So I kind of posed the question. I said, how are Christianity and traditional conservatism doing? In other words, how accurate was Buchanan's warning? Like will be no coexistence. Well, look at what Rick Grinnell is saying, right? Rick Grinnell, the shining face of, the LGBT in the GOP today. Okay, he said about the RNC Pride Coalition, quote, in 1992, I was working on the Bush-Quayle re-election campaign on national staff, and I sat and listened to Pat Buchanan speak at the Houston Republican Convention. By the way, remember that speech? That's the culture war speech. Remember that amazing, fantastic convention speech that we watched on the 7/14 anniversary stream? Remember that speech? Remember that speech, the great speech we heard from Pat Buchanan at the 1992 convention? That's the speech in question here. Okay, so instead of saying, wow, that was one of the greatest speeches I've ever heard, because it truly was, truly one of the better speeches in American history, he says, instead, he didn't like that speech, right? Again, this is the guy we're now kind of handing the inheritance to for the conservative movement. He outlined a strategy where gay people were not welcomed in the Republican Party. I can remember sitting there, listening, and vowing to not allow that to stand. And that's fundamentally what you're getting, right? These people are vowing to not, it's like neoconservatism at its core, because they're vowing to not allow the real conservatives to stand and to run this party anymore, truly. Now, 29 years later, we were at an event where the former president of the United States and the first lady are welcoming us and hosting 600 influential gays, lesbians, and their straight allies, okay? And when you look at that takeover and you look at now it translating into policy, you can see it happening right before your eyes. This is true. Don't say we didn't try to warn you. Because look, some of you guys may look at this now and just be like, well, I don't see what the big deal is. If two gay men want to get married, I don't care. Just keep it away from my kids. Okay, well, let's play this game then. Let's make a bet. You know what I mean? Let's see, if we have it your way, let's see where the Republican Party is on this issue in 10 years. Let's see where that goes. Let's see where this line of logic goes. These are the same people who 10 years ago were like, whoa, I don't mind if they have civil unions, but marriage, that's a little bit too far. In 10 years, you will be the same people justifying child drag queen story hours and gender transitions for kids and all these things. And so just don't even give me the lecture. Truly, Okay, anyways, early signs already tell us otherwise. LGBT conservatives have little use for socially traditional Christians or paleo-conservatives and have made it clear that their vision of the political right excludes them. And that's what's important to understand. This is not about inclusion. Okay, we're not expanding the GOP here. Actually, they're just kicking out people like you and I. They're kicking out the Christians. They're kicking out the conservatives. And that's really what's going on here. That's really what's going on here. Okay. Grinnell has vowed to campaign against Republicans critical of transgenderism, while newly conservative refugees from the left, such as Douglas Murray, argue that social conservatism makes the right, quote, unattractive. Yeah. Yeah, it's Douglas Murray, that guy who wrote that recent book, War on the West, and is on every conservative show talking about how, here's why conservatives will win the war for the West or whatever. Yeah, in what way exactly? This is the same guy who says, and I quote, social conservatism makes the right unattractive. Oh, really? Really? It's also just not true. Okay, can we get that out of the way too? Even if it were true, I don't care because it's a principled thing, but it's also just not true. Social conservatism, culture war issues are what won Donald Trump the election in 2016. Okay, as much as we want to kind of pretend like otherwise, it really wasn't about his trade policy. I mean, don't get me wrong, that helped in the Midwest. Okay, don't get me wrong, that's a fundamental part of what we believe and what we support. But what really helped him? It was the culture war issues, right? It was being anti-establishment. It was hating that political class. It was immigration, right? It was culture. Okay, the cultural divide in America, more so than the economic divide. It was truly a cultural divide that delivered Donald Trump that victory. It was the culture divide between the middle American radical and the Silicon Valley head that won him that election. That's really what it was about. It wasn't about economic divide. Okay, that's important to understand. And Ron DeSantis is popular because he is a culture warrior. Glenn Youngkin won in Virginia off of cultural issues. Understand this. It's far from making the right unattractive. Actually, social conservatism is what breeds life into the right. I mean, truly. So, I finished off by saying increasingly there seems to be no home in America for socially conservative traditional Christians. The Republican Party and the conservative movement that they have built are now rejecting them. And this is true. This is just so true. And it is sad. It is truly sad to witness. It's pathetic. It truly is pathetic. So the second thing I want to talk about is actually NATO. But I'll go through chats here for like a few minutes or so, and then we'll go on to the second kind of topic here. So Matt Heilman says, "Can get a happy?" It's Matt Heilman's. Let's go! Happy birthday to Matt Heilman. Okay, former APU Chad, now American Virtue Chad. Okay, soon to be state legislator in North Dakota. Okay, and we're not just like hyping him up here. Won the primary, uncontested general election. Okay, you can basically call him representative elect at this point. So true. Shout out Matt Heilman. Happy birthdays in this chat to Matt Heilman. Let's freaking go. Let's go. All right. So, all right. Second thing we wanted to talk about here. Okay. Oh, shout out. Look at, and on the flip side. All right. Shout out MTG, Matt Gaetz, Lauren Bober. Let's go. Let's go. Some of the good ones, truly. But anyways. Yeah, happy birthday to Matt Heilman. Okay, that was the first betrayal. Okay, the second betrayal, of course, obviously is this issue of NATO expansion. Okay, so is there enough votes to filibuster the bill? I hope so. I honestly haven't really checked. It's sounding like yes. It's actually sounding like it's probably not even going to get through the Senate because of their session is too short or something. It's almost August. August is when the Senate kind of leaves or whatever, right? But also the LGBT agenda wants to accept homosexuality as normal because it causes depopulation, less families. That's correct. It's true. It's true. It's a great take. So yeah. All right, second thing we wanted to talk about. Let's get back into this. Okay, 18 Republicans, including MTG, Matt Gaetz, and Lauren Boebert, voted against Sweden and Finland joining NATO. Actually, we shouldn't be framing it as that. We should be framing it as the fact. Look how many Republicans voted in favor of Sweden and Finland joining NATO. Okay. But among the dissenters in the Monday vote were some of the furthest right members, including Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. Shout out to Marjorie Taylor Greene. We love MTG. Matt Gaetz of Florida. We love Matt Gaetz. And Lauren Boebert of Colorado. The vote was a symbolic one to express support from the House for the applications, blah, 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 blah. All right. Actually, a pretty good list. Tells you a lot, okay? Andy Biggs, Dan Bishop, Madison Cawthorn, Gates, Green, Thomas Massey, Mary Miller. Pretty good list. Chip Roy, Jefferson Van Drew. Let's go. Let's go. But, talk about this for a second, too. It's funny. It's just sad, actually. The fact that Finland and Sweden joining NATO, it seems like a crazy idea, right? Notice how this is framed. Furthest right members can't believe that they voted against expanding NATO. It's like, do we understand what the implications of NATO actually are? Okay. We're talking about a mutual defense alliance that involves like total war. Okay, so we're talking about armed soldiers, nuclear war, etc. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Finland, right, borders Russia. Am I mistaken there? Okay. Well, I want to like display something to you guys. All right, just how crazy this concept is. Let me actually make sure so I'm not. Yeah, exactly. All right. Let me show you something here for a second. All right. So the premise, again, we're the ones being called crazy for saying, what the heck is wrong with you? You don't want to expand NATO? Okay, well, let's talk about what we're actually discussing here, okay? So again, NATO is not a matter of like, well, we'll send arms to fund you. No, it's a total defense alliance, right? Which means that if Russian troops decide that they want to go into NATO, okay, that means that we have to send our own troops back. If Russia decides they want to use nuclear weapons in NATO, that means we're going to World War III with Finland. Okay, border countries. All right, this is what we're talking about here, and the concept, the idea that this is somehow rational. We're not just talking about NATO expansion in general here, which is just ridiculous. NATO, if anything, should be shrinking. Okay, the very purpose was to resist the Soviet Union that no longer exists. But still, like regardless, I mean, you take a look at this. We're talking about adding a country that literally borders Russia into a mutual defense alliance that hinges on nuclear war, okay? And think of how Russia must be perceiving this, okay? Because, we always make Russia out to be the bad guy in every single situation. It's like Russia expansion is Russia this. Okay, well, we're the people literally talking about. You wonder why they're kind of paranoid, right? You wonder why the Russians are paranoid. You wonder why Vladimir Putin thinks he needs to invade Ukraine in order to kind of have a more defensible border, right? Because that's part of the reason, that's part of the motivation for his invasion of Ukraine is the fact that Russia's border is not easily defendable. They're kind of trying to expand their territory to make an easily more defensible border. It's like, well, unprovoked invasion, unjustified invasion. Okay, well, it really doesn't help your case there when you're talking about adding countries that literally border Russia itself into NATO. Okay, we've talked about Ukraine in the past. We've backed off of that, but now we're talking about adding Finland to NATO. Okay, and what this will likely translate to eventually is troops on the Russian border and maybe even nuclear weapons right on the Russian border. And you mean to look at me and tell me like, oh, well, this just sounds like smart policy. Can't believe Marjorie Taylor Greene and Madison Cawthorn and Matt Gaetz would vote against this. What a bunch of nut jobs. Actually, I think what's nut job, what's crazy, what's insane is the concept of even entertaining the idea of adding a country like Finland into NATO. What is the point of this? Okay, Christopher Lowry for 10. Thank you very much for the 10. He says, why should Sweden and Finland join NATO? Why should we defend their borders? They have no military. Sweden hasn't fought in war since Napoleon. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the $10. And this is so true. This is so true. And notice really, again, there are so many Republicans who will campaign on the slogan of America First who likely voted to add them, which is just insane to think about, right? Just absolutely ridiculous to think about. What does America gain from adding Finland into NATO or Sweden, right? Because, the concept of this is supposed to be it's a mutual defense pact, but really that's not what it is. All NATO basically is you could say the United States, it's really the United States defending everyone else. Okay, that's really what it is. But if you want to kind of at least be gracious a little bit to the other countries, you could say it's basically the US, the UK, and maybe like Canada, Germany, and France really defending everyone else. Like that's the backbone of NATO. And even then, I think you're pushing it a little bit, if I'm being completely honest. I think that's stretching it a little bit. I think it's really maybe the US and the UK, and that's about it. What do the American people have to gain of this? Because it's not like if America goes to war, Finland and Sweden are just going to be rushing to our defense and helping us out. Like Christopher brings up, they basically have no military. They have no military. What are they going to contribute? All it is literally just us now having to stick out our necks to, again, a country that literally borders Russia. And how do you think Russia feels about this? Well, let's ask the question. How would America feel if I mean, the Warsaw Pact is no longer around, but let's just say Russia did have some type of defense pact. How would we feel if they added, let's say, Mexico to that defense pact, or Canada, or you could even say like Cuba, which, you know, we kind of know how the U.S. reacted to that back in the day, right? And we would look at that and say, what an insanely dangerous, unjustified provocation against us. Is really ought to be perceived as an act of war. They're really doing this. They're going to send what's probably going to translate into troops and maybe even like ICBMs to a country bordering like right next to us. This is talk of war, right? And that's how we would perceive it. So how do you think Russia perceives it? I mean, truly, this is ridiculous. This is dangerous. This is reckless. And, you know, the fact that more Republicans don't understand this, I mean, is frankly sad. But what do you expect? They're the same party voting to send all this money to Ukraine and whatever else. And it's just sad and it's ridiculous. Okay. You know, and we really ought to be of the opinion that NATO needs to be contracting, you know, scaling back, if not being totally disbanded at this point. You know, it's a Cold War era alliance, and it frankly serves no point really in the modern world. But what has basically been translated, whereas it used to be a defense pact, right? These two countries have defense pacts against each other, so that way we can kind of hold the line, we can hold that iron curtain. You know, what it now basically has become is an expansionist, you know, end of the globalist American empire, and the expansion of liberal democracy across the seas and across the world, and building that American empire, which, by the way, is not even a cool American empire. It's not even an epic right-wing Christian American empire. No, it's like the American empire of what? Gay marriage, you know, of feminism. You know, that's exactly what you're getting here. And so I heard something about Turkey blocking Sweden and Finland from joining NATO. If so, thank you. No, thank you, Turkey. If that's the case, let's go. Let's go. Okay. Because they understand how stupid and reckless this is. Okay. You know, it's just sad. It's just sad that we have to deal with this. And truly, you know, the Republican Party, they hate us and they hate you. And there's really nothing else to say. Wrong, Turkey caved. Okay, well, I guess we're screwed then. You know, truly. I guess we'll go F ourselves then. I mean, truly. Yeah. Wow. That's sad. You know, that's pathetic. So it's ridiculous. I mean, it truly is. What's the point of voting Republican? You know, is it to defend social conservatism? No, they don't know how to do that. Is it to defend America first? Nope, they don't do that either. Okay, well, let's look at the things they supposedly do defend. Is it to defend low taxes? Actually, no, not really, because they don't really do that either. Is it to defend fiscal responsibility and balance the budget? No, actually, they don't do that either, right? So the things we really want them to do, they don't do those things at all, okay? They sell out our country. They sell out its people. They don't stand for social. They don't do anything. But even for the things that, like, maybe the neocon heads, the kind of DC heads care more about, they don't do those things either. They're literally legitimately a party of useless people, okay? Because it's like they don't even conserve the things maybe we care about a little bit less. We still care about, but a little bit less. They're not the top priority, right? Fiscal conservatism, will throw that out the window. They don't do anything on that front, you know. And they'll get you a modest tax cut at best. You know, I guess there you go. There you go. That is worth our blood and sweat and tears. It's worth, you know, people literally throughout the years getting pummeled in the streets and like going through all this sacrifice to support conservatism and donating all this money and this volunteer resources, door knocking, phone banking, doing all this work to campaign and support the Republican Party. All we have to show for the grand scheme of all that is like a modest tax cut at best, you know. We don't get anything else other than that. It's a useless party. Useless political party. GOP agenda says unchecked capitalism, pure globalism, and low taxes. Well, again, I kind of even want to like push back on this a little bit, because the unchecked capitalism, which, you know, I'm not for, but still, they don't really believe in that either, right? Because they'll still give out their political favors. They still, you know, it's like, you know, see what I'm saying? Because I've talked about this before. It's like they don't even give you fiscal responsibility, right? They don't do that either. It's only capitalism when it comes to doing good things, right? So when it's like, oh, we think that we should go after big tech. No, we can't do that because of capitalism. On other things, on other like issues, it's like the GOP is actively anti. They're just like wrong where they should be right and right where they should be wrong. It's just ridiculous. I mean, truly. all over the place. Pure globalism, that part is true. Low taxes. And again, they're modest tax cuts at best. They don't even give you the Herman Cain or like the 2016 Ted Cruz tax cuts. You get modest tax cuts at best. And that's all we have to show for like decades of trying and doing all this fighting. Exactly. That's what it really is. Free market for me, not for you. Exactly. That's what it truly is. That's what we really get out of it. So it's not even like it's not even a matter of, well, they focus on this when they should be focused on that, because they're not really focused on the small government stuff either. We don't even get to reap the benefits of that, because at least maybe if the GOP were fighting, we actually did all that fighting for fiscal responsibility all these years. It's like, okay, we wouldn't have pro-family economics, I'll give you that, but at least we would actually get low taxes. But then, bigger than that, maybe we'd have a balanced budget where, we wouldn't have such a huge national debt, and maybe there wouldn't be so much inflation right now because of all that stimulus, because of all that spending. You see what I'm saying? Right? Yes, you'd sacrifice a lot of other things. You'd sacrifice social issues, immigration, all these things. But at least maybe we'd get the benefit that hypothetically would come out of being fiscally responsible. But that's the problem. They're not even fiscally responsible either. Like I said, it's a useless political party. You don't get anything. You literally don't get anything out of voting Republican, okay? You don't get the things we want, and you don't even get the things they say are more important than the things we want. It's truly sad. It's truly sad, okay? Exactly. Market is so free, but we have monopolies, all that stuff. Exactly. And when it comes to propping up monopolies, the GOP is happy to do that. But, Geeks United says the Republican Party has become the party of cucks and degenerates, no different from the Democrats. They will face God's judgment all the same. Yeah, this is true. Yeah, both sides are corrupt, but the left more so. I mean, I agree with that. I'm not necessarily saying to vote I'm definitely not saying to vote Democrat. I'm not even necessarily saying to sit out the election. But we have to demand better. I mean, truly. I mean, we have to send a message one way or the other that this is just unacceptable, I mean, truly. So, I don't know. We'll get there. We'll get too black-pilled, okay? One day, we just gotta keep pushing. Gotta keep pushing to just replace and just decimate this Republican Party, the current Republican Party. They're all a disgrace. They're all terrible, truly. So, it's sad. Really is sad. So there is one thing I wanted to show. There's one thing I wanted to show. It kind of loops back a little bit to our same-sex marriage debate and the stuff we were talking about earlier. But actually someone sent me this the other day, which I bet you many of you guys have actually seen this, but I have not seen this before. I only saw this like recently. Okay, which is and this is very relevant to this discussion we're having right now. It's this speech from Paul Harvey, who is kind of like, from my understanding, he's kind of like the Rush Limbaugh before Rush Limbaugh, right? He was like an old school conservative commentator, passed away in 2009, but been around since like the 40s and 50s. And this was something, this is kind of a little mini speech he gave on the air in 1965. Okay, 1965. Keep that in mind when you're watching. This is something talked about in 1965. All right, you'll realize how truly how relevant this is. Okay, amazing stuff.
I'd want to engulf for the devil.
I think this is the one. The one with music is more dramatic, which we will view.
If I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy.
John Doyle intro to one of his videos. Well, I have not seen that. When's the next American Virtue event? We're doing our launch event, okay? State of the Movement this Friday at SAS after the SAS session in Tampa, Florida, okay? So that's going to be the next one. It's going to be like our launch event. And then we're planning, I mean, I'm sure there'll be events throughout the fall, but we're planning really like our big national event to be in December in Arizona. But yeah, if you're in Florida this Friday, if you haven't heard about it yet, it's on my community tab. I'll give you the details. But yes, this Friday at SAS, Tampa, Florida, I will be speaking. Obviously, David will be speaking. We'll have Anthony Sabatini, He'll be giving kind of the big address. Mike Crispy and maybe some mystery speakers. I don't know. That's all I'm allowed to disclose at the moment. But yeah, and Monster Z, by the way, too. So yeah, launch event, Tampa, Florida, on my community tab. Go check it out. Use the promo code DAOPAC without a K at the end. Just DAOPAC for 10% off there. So
until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers.
So true. So true. We talked about this. We discussed this earlier.
The wisdom of the serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve. Do as you please.
Yep.
To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old, I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves,
so true,
nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn.
I don't know if there's anything else I have to say about this. I mean, it's all just true. Melbourne, Florida. Yeah, let's carpool from Australia. Real.
Was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the
so
flames.
True.
If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions, just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug sniffs.
This is 1965. It's powerful. Like, wow.
Dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science.
Wow.
I would lure priests and
1965.
misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle.
So true.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich.
You know the most pathetic thing about this, though? Truly, everyone's saying, wow, I can't believe this was 1965. Yeah, it was 1965. Which really raises the question of we could have stopped this. The conservative movement of old could have stopped this, okay? The National Review, the kind of William Buckley descendants, National Review, Young America's Foundation, all those kind of conservative institutions that coalesced around the 1960s, they could have done something about this. We still have the time, we still have the resources. We could have never let it get this bad. Because obviously, like now, it's like, wow, we can't believe he realized this back in the 60s. But this is to say, yeah, like people could tell the same thing that was happening now, that's now gotten worse, was also going on in the 60s, and it's much older, which is to say, what the heck were conservatives for so many generations doing? I mean, we're young. We've been in the fight since like the beginning, but you really look back at just the failure, the ball dropping of just like so many past generations of right wingers. It's sad. It's pathetic, And now you even see them here today, like the National Review. I mean, you see them here today. What do? They counter signal us. They say, well, culture war bad, Trump bad, all this stuff. It's like, okay, buddy,
I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct.
So true. Moral relativism, even within the church, like this idea that true Christianity means we just don't take a stand on anything, right? Christianity equal being nice to people. We're just super nice to people. That's all it means to be Christian. Don't take any adamant stand against, sin, because that's not loving. Yeah, it actually is loving, but there you go.
I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that
wow.
swinging is more fun.
Wow.
That what you see on TV is the way to be.
Yep.
And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure.
Yep.
In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
So true. So true. Bluegrass Lover said, I like the new. Isn't it epic? Hold on. Isn't it sick? Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Okay. So I didn't really have the lighting quite right. The light's right here. I was trying to like work this out. But now it's ready to go. Now it's ready to go. I'll probably do a video like tomorrow or something. I like it too. I like it too. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. You know, I told you I'd make it look good. I told you we'd make it look professional. And this is true. This is 1965. Honestly, the 1960-1964 elections were the worst events to happen to this country. Kennedy and Johnson started this willingly or not. Oh, it was 100% willingly. And I think, you know, conservatives generally understand that Johnson was bad, but I think people need to understand that Kennedy was bad too. Okay. Kennedy and LBJ believed in the same thing, right? LBJ is Kennedy's legacy. They believed in the exact same thing. They wanted the exact same thing. Okay. You know, this whole idea that like JFK was conservative or JFK was a patriot, it's just ridiculous. You know, it's ridiculous. And if that were the case, and people, you know, the conservatives sometimes give this take too. They're like, well, bro, don't you know JFK was taken out by the CIA? It's like, okay, is that supposed to, first of all, I doubt it. But is that supposed to be like, oh, our shining example of why JFK was a threat to the system? Because if JFK were the one who was the threat to the system, then why did the system basically allow him to win in 1960? Does anyone have the answer to that? Because we know that, you know, we know the stories behind the 1960 election. It's like, really? You know, again, if you believe that that's the case, then, you know, explain the 1960 election like this is true, you know. So both Kennedy and Johnson were perverts. I mean, this is true. Kennedy was just as liberal as LBJ, you know. Find me a single policy LBJ did that Kennedy didn't support. Well, that would not have supported, you know. And you look at his, I mean, he would have 100% supported the Great Society. He would have supported the 1965 Immigration Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Vietnam War. You know, everything LBJ did. JFK would have been 100% in lockstep with it, and we need to stop pretending like it's not. You know, it's 100% true. So, you know, this is how it goes. He's one hippie with long hair, writes the most prophetic piece in recent history. So true. So true. You know, you truly get it when you truly understand it. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much, truly. So Kennedy wrote A Nation of Immigrants. Yeah, exactly. He did. But you know, as we know, no, actually Kennedy was like a conservative. He was a conservative because Kennedy was like pro-life. Even though, I mean, let's be honest, if Kennedy lived to see Roe v. Wade, he would have become pro-choice too. Like, why do we even pretend otherwise on that? Yeah, he ran as being pro-life because literally at the time in America, let's not forget this, abortion was massively unpopular and stigmatized. You know, it would have been suicide back then for anyone not to be pro-life in 1960. You know what I mean? This is true. Jack Wayne says we gave the Catholics a chance at the presidency and they screwed it all up. Hey, we love Catholics on this channel, but it's objectively, you know, the two Catholic presidents we've had, yeah, not much to write home about. Okay, you have JFK and you have his moral predecessor Joe Brandon, which is true, by the way. Okay, can we? Oh, JFK would have never been like Joe Biden. No, actually, they're like extensions of each other. Like this is true. Okay. Kennedy was also sexually degenerate. Look up his affair with Marilyn Monroe, who appeared on the first cover of the Playboy magazine. Yeah, and he did, you know, cocaine and drugs and all these things. I mean, he was not a good guy, okay? He's not on our side or anything. I mean, this is true. Catholic Supreme Court justices are much better. I agree with that. That is true. You know, Roe v. Wade was ended under a Catholic president. I love that meme. You have like George Bush, Protestant, did nothing to end abortion. Obama, Muslim, did nothing to end abortion. Trump, Protestant, nothing. Catholic, Joe Biden stopped abortion in 2 years. It's a S tier meme. I love that meme. So The problem was that us Catholics stopped trying to convert America after Kennedy. Okay. JFK is literally Hunter Brandon. True, real. So, this is literally the case. Thoughts on the JFK assassination? I really don't have much to say about it. I mean, I think some of the conspiracies could be true. It could not be true. Either way, I think it's just important to understand the ramifications of that. And the ramifications of that was that he became a martyr. And because he became a martyr, he's remembered a lot more fondly than he actually should be, I mean, he really wasn't that popular, It was kind of a lot like Obama, you could say, honestly, like Obama, if he never got it, started off kind of being this fangirl thing over, but was really declining in popularity, and then obviously he gets assassinated, and that makes the martyr thing or whatever, So this is true. And really, you talk. I know Barry Goldwater is obviously a very revered figure in conservatism, but when you really think, and I'm not saying he would have, it would have been easy regardless, but still, truly, I mean, you look at just how poorly he did in 1964, and then really also, it's very similar. The parallels really could be drawn to Mitt Romney, right? Because really, under both administrations, both the JFK, LBJ, and Obama, the Obama Biden administration, right, it really didn't get bad till the second term, right? We could have righted the ship from the first term, but the second term is really what set the country off like this irreversible cliff. Okay, you look back to 1964, had just Republicans or conservatives, whatever the candidate is, had we just won that election, everything that happened from 64 to 68 would just not be there, right? We would have been able to really hold the line there. You know what I'm saying? But instead, right, what happens? Barry Goldwater horrendously screwed it up. He ran just an awful campaign. I mean, let's be honest about that. I know he was, I'm not saying it would have been an easy election. It really was an uphill battle. But, and he screws that up royally, okay, does horribly. And as a result of Barry Goldwater's just utter terribleness, right, what do we end up with? We end up with, the second term of LBJ, which saw a lot of policies that basically set America, I should say, down an irreversibly poor path. And really, you could say the same thing is true of 2012, right? And 2012 should be an even greater example because Obama was vulnerable. Obama was beatable, but instead we put Mitt Romney up there, who was a total loser. We put a guy up there who didn't want to fight, didn't understand the stakes. He's like, oh, well, my character, my Mormon character, this or that or whatever. Okay, so he wouldn't fight. He wouldn't go after Obama. And as a result of it, he lost because he was just too much of a pushover. And look at what his principled conservatism got us. We got a second term Obama, which, let's remember this, that's really when things started to get woke, right? That's really when our culture truly started to go off the cliff, really descend into what it is today. It was that second term of Obama. And you can make a strong case that had Obama not been there as the cultural leader of America for that second term, you could really argue we might not be where we are today, right? We might have been able to kind of preserve to an extent, that kind of 2010-esque culture that obviously had a lot of problems, but would have been a lot easier to salvage and correct than being in the position we are today, right? And so truly the Republican defeats in the 1964, arguably the 1962, but especially the 1964 and the 2012 elections, at the hands of losers, quite frankly, are just some of the worst things that have ever happened to this country. Okay. I mean, truly, So this is true. This is true. I say Romney reminds me more of Dewey, who was a Rockefeller Republican and who acted like a rhino and blew the 1948 election to unpopular liberal Democrat Harry S. Truman. I mean, this is true, but did the Truman presidency really set us down this horrible path or whatever? I don't really think so. We would have been fine, honestly, in the long grand scheme of things. But it's true. So 1964 was a lost cause from the beginning. The Republicans weren't winning that one, no matter what. That one in Goldwater. I mean, like I said, it wouldn't have been easy, but it was a pretty pathetic performance, honestly, all things considered. Okay, so All right. Anyways, guys, that basically we could probably go to Q&A now. Unless I'm trying to think if there's anything else I had planned on actually. Oh, well, actually, I guess I did want to talk about this a little bit. It's the fact that we have Nikki Haley. Hold on, give me a second here. I want to talk a little bit briefly before we go directly into Q&A, briefly about the kind of race that's ramping up, the proxy race that's ramping up for the 2024 Republican primary. And obviously people talk a lot about the Trump DeSantis competition that's, kind of, I think it's implicitly going on, but it's probably not going to end in an actual primary against each other. But sure, there's sort of an aspect to it going on. But people seem to forget about, for obvious reasons, they seem to forget about two big people who are truly, really doing the campaigning right now for 2024. And that is firstly Nikki Haley, and that is secondly Mike Pence. But I want to talk about Nikki Haley because she tweeted out something that was very interesting. So she's speaking at the SUFI Summit here, okay? The SUFI Summit, which I guess is Christians United for Israel Summit 2022, okay? But she says, and if this president signs any sort of deal, I make you a promise. The next president will shred it, on her first day in office. Okay, so this is basically like her just saying she's going to run. She's going to run for president in 2024. All right. Now, let me just say this about Nikki Haley. All right. Truthfully, I don't think she poses a threat to Donald Trump at all. Okay. I know that the establishment thinks, well, Nikki Haley's like this electoral juggernaut, this electoral warrior, because she's like this classy conservative woman or whatever. Okay. But the truth is, the way I see Nikki Haley, I mean, truthfully, this is how I see it. I don't think she has any appeal outside of maybe the upper middle class suburbanites and ultimately that sort of like DC sphere of the conservative base, the conservative movement, I should say, right? She has a strong appeal with the cocktail party class, the suit wearing class, the DC class. But truly, I mean, in my honest opinion, she's pretentious. Okay, she's absolutely pretentious. I mean, look at even this pose. Look at this pose, like that cross-armed, strong conservative woman, but strong but elegant, but classy conservative woman approach. I mean, my prediction of this is, I mean, I think it's becoming pretty clear that she is going to try to run against Trump. And honestly, I think we expected that. Okay, let's be completely honest about that. I know she came out and said that she's not going to try to run against Trump in 2021. Everyone right now is getting opportunistic. Mike Pompeo is getting opportunistic, etc. But Nikki Haley, kind of the poster child of a lot of like just the cocktail party people. Let's be honest, and maybe it's a good thing that the first caucus is in Iowa, because let's be totally realistic about this. Let's be totally realistic. Nikki Haley has no appeal in real America, specifically in middle America. Okay, because that whole classy, elegant, conservative, neoconservative woman approach, it's actually, I would argue the way she comes off to real voters is pretentious. Okay, she's pretentious. She is insufferable. I mean, truly she is. This whole holier than thou, better than everyone personality, rising above it all personality. Like I said, truly, it is pretentious. Okay, it is. And it's not going to go over well in the middle America. It's not going to go over well with the real Republican voter in this primary. She's going to get crushed. Let's be completely honest about that. And we could talk about the fact that she's a neocon, all this stuff. The argument basically by a lot of people, she has good optics. Former UN ambassador, classy woman. She's a mom. She's like multiracial. No, it's actually just pretentious. She is pretentious. She's a pretentious human being. Okay, she always has this whole like concerned, holier than thou voice in person. Again, it's not going to go over well. I mean, truly, it's not. American Prediction says, thoughts on Mike Garcia voting yes on the Obergefell codify. Yeah, it's very disappointing. Very disappointed in Mike Garcia. He's been one of the good ones for a long time. He comes from California, a fairly like tilt Democrat district. And we've been very impressed with him for a long time, but truthfully, yeah, there's no excuse for this. This is sad. Very disappointed. Not something you want to see. I mean, truly. So, and so you have Nikki Haley. It's really looking like three people. Okay. Now you've heard, I believe this week, Mike Pompeo also came out and said that he's open to running against Trump in 2024. And I think I don't understand what the hype. He came out basically against Trump this week, from my memory. I don't understand what the hype was against this guy in the for this guy in the first place. I know there's a lot of like boomers and stuff who always say like, Mike Pompeo this, Mike Pompeo that. It's like, I've been saying since like 2021 he's an unimpressive, uncharismatic neocon. I don't understand what the hype is for him, but he's not going to do anything. Okay, Mike Pence. He's basically the favorite pick of YAF, the Young America's Foundation. He's doing these campus tours. He's endorsing. He obviously endorsed Brian Kemp. Now he's trying to campaign for Karen Taylor Robinson, basically trying to campaign against the Trump endorsed picks as like these 2024 proxy wars. None of these people are going to go anywhere. All right, let's be honest about that. I mean, who out there really even like cared for Mike Pence to begin with, right? The only reason Mike Pence had popularity is because he was Trump's vice president. I mean, honestly, realistically, I know he was supposed to be the outreach to that sort of evangelical base, and maybe he did a bit of that in 2016. But let's be real, he was largely like unimpressive, right? He really never had any large scale mass following of his own. At least DeSantis can say that. At least Tucker Carlson can say that, or someone like that, Oh, by the way, I don't think either of those people are going to primary Trump, but still, largely unimpressive, largely sad. But it's truly, I want them to run. I want them to run. I want Trump to decimate these people, truly like just historically repudiate people like Nikki Haley out of the Republican Party. That's absolutely what we want to see and what we need to see. So, how many dudes simp for Nikki Haley like they do for what's her face? I don't know. But quite a bit, honestly. I mean, let's be honest about it too. The appeal of her largely is based off of the simp vote. Not just among like young dudes. I'd argue even more so among just like white knighting neoconservatives in DC. They're like, wow, what a strong, classy woman. I mean, look at this. With all due respect, defending America with grit and grace, because I'm Nikki Haley. If you want something done, Nikki R. Haley. Leadership lessons from bold woman. Okay, you know what? I understand. The cocktail party class in DC think this is so appealing, so impressive. Republican voters in the primary in 2024 are going to find this pretentious, especially in Iowa, especially in a place like Middle America. I mean, this is true. She's pretentious. She's obnoxious. She's terrible, truly. And truly, she thinks she's better. She thinks she's smarter than the average Trump voter, and that's not going to go over well. Okay, truly. So, with all due respect, seriously. So. Anyways, guys, we'll go to Q&A now. Okay, I know it's a little bit of a shorter stream, but I don't really have much else to say or react to. We'll go to Q&A for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and we'll call it a night. So let's have fun. Extended Q&A, truly extended Q&A. Fairly open Q&A tonight. So, let's do it. Or if there's things you guys want us to react to, interesting things to react to, we can do that as well. But firstly, I am kind of hungry for some reason, so I'm gonna go get like a granola bar or something real quick to hold us over. But let's see. South Carolina seems to love token minorities. Tim Scott, Nikki Haley. I don't know who Lady G is, but I do know that obviously we have what's her face, Nancy Mace. There you go, another token one. So yeah. What is your favorite color? I don't really have a favorite color, if I'm being honest. I honestly don't. It really just depends. Sometimes I like red on stuff. Sometimes I like blue on stuff. And sometimes I like white. Sometimes I don't know if I have a favorite color. I think I really like certain color schemes. Okay. I'm really a fan of like a blue and red color scheme. I think those colors that go together. I think people obviously agree with this. Orange and blue, that's another good color scheme. I don't have a favorite color though. Black and pink, or like white and pink, sometimes that's an interesting color scheme. But I can't say I'm really a fan of like one particular color or the other, if I'm being completely honest. Vince, if you are reviewing Pixar movies now, you should do Wall-E. I honestly have not seen every Pixar movie in the book, though. That's part of the problem, I didn't really grow up watching all the iconic Pixar movies. I only watched a few of them. So, Chesscom Support says, come on, not a fan of Lindsay, but he isn't gay. Where are you getting the idea? This is, I mean, okay, if I'm going to be honest, this is kind of an openly known secret in DC that he is. The guy literally has no wife, no kids, never been married. What do you think's and kind of is a little bit effeminate? What do you think is happening? This is like a known fact. What do you mean he's not? Lady G is Lindsey Graham. Oh, there you go. I mean, this is like an open secret. I don't know why people don't believe this. Like it's just kind of a known fact that he is, you know. So Bullet Film says, is Trump announcing before the midterms? There's rumors saying he will. I don't think it's a good idea, honestly. I think he should just wait. You know, Republicans are going to do well in the midterms regardless. He can kind of take credit for that. You know, kind of be in a stage of conservative momentum. He can capitalize on that. I think right after the midterms is the right time to do it. I don't know how true the rumors are about like September or whatever, but you know, I definitely think you should wait, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't think that's like the best strategic move, honestly, if I'm being realistic. So sorry, I'm chewing. You guys are gonna hear me chew. All right, it's VinceDao ASMR, literally. Trump should announce on January 6th. That would never happen, but that would be so epic. I mean, that would be legitimately epic. That would be the greatest thing ever. Who do you think is more cringe? South Carolina? Oh, that is a good question. That is a good question. I would have to say I'd have to say the Utah GOP takes the cake for that slightly because at least South Carolina has a pretty solid governor, right? They have one like statewide elected official who's good. The Utah governor is horrible. Mitt Romney's horrible. Mike Lee is generally not that good. He's kind of like a C- at best. So I really have to go for the Utah GOP on that question. I mean, honestly, truthfully, Vince, call Trump and tell him to wait. I will do that right now. I'll do that right now. Okay, right after the stream, I'm going to call Trump and tell him to wait till after the Vince, you should check out the Abeville Institute. It shows a Southern perspective in the Civil War and politics. It really helped me put things into historical reality. That's interesting. We could do that. Yeah, why not? Is it on YouTube or something? Take a look at this. I changed, by the way, like the URL, like the redirect from a channel, and it always does this. It's VinceDao 76 now because Patriot DAO was fairly outdated, so I actually changed that. Okay. Abe Institute. Or Abville, I don't know. What video are we supposed to watch? What are we meant to react to here? Or is it like many of them? I don't know. Let me know what video we're actually supposed to watch from them. But let's see. At least the South Carolina GOP aren't simping for Joseph Smith. Well, that's also true too, right? That's true. Like at least the South Carolina GOP isn't like Mormon. Like, no offense to Mormons, but you know, I kind of get a W on that front in my eyes. So, Spencer Cox, he, him is super cringe. Yeah. And South Carolina actually has a pretty decent governor. You know, at least they got that going for them. So is that a Kai diss? It's not a Kai diss. It's a Mormon thing in general. You know, we love Mormons, but you know, I don't believe they have a gospel that is genuine. You know, they believe in a false gospel, and we want to turn them from that. We don't want to Mormonize America, the Mormon take over America. No, that's bad. That's bad. I don't care how many families you have, how many kids you have. You're going to lead people to hell in the process. Not a fan. Not a fan. Love Mormons, but I want them to correct their gospel and believe in the authentic one. Truly. So I like Kai, but he disavowed you and American virtue. It is what it is. Truly, it is what it is. I don't really care. None of us really care. To be fair, the theocracy that LDS has created is kind of base and Protestants should replicate it. I do agree with that. Like, you really do wish the Southern Baptist Convention kind of had the influence on Southern politics and the way the Mormon Church, for example, has in, like, say, Utah. And you wish they'd use that to translate to, like, hardcore social conservatives. But instead, the South has people like Nancy Mace and a lot of just neocons and terrible people. So, not good. Thoughts on he, him being a Nazi dog whistle? He, him, abbreviated HH or 88. So true. If you put the he, him in your bio, literally, if you do the pronouns thing, you're supporting Hitler. I mean, this is factually true. So, I want everyone to know that, understand that truly. If you see, stay away. Okay, stay away. If you see people with the pronouns in their bio, you see people or he, him, it's a dog whistle at Hitler. And this is objective. This is true. This is true. So beware. Don't associate with those Nazis there. It's so true. Okay, so true. So, it's real. It's real. Goebbels himself did the he, him thing. Like, this is so true. Yeah. Beware, it's literally HH. It's so true. What do they mean by the he, him pronoun? They're literally hailing Hitler. This is factually true. And you need to beware of those people. Okay. So true. Literally. He, Himmler. No, literally the case. Literally the case. This is true. This is true. Who's your favorite senator? I mean, at the moment, it's Josh Hawley. I mean, I don't think there's anyone who's really better than him at the moment. But, sorry. Chewing. Starting next January, it's going to be JD Vance easily. So we're looking forward to JD Vance. We're looking forward to Blake Masters. We're looking forward to Adam Laxalt. Things are going to get. Ted Budd, obviously, or is it Bo Hines? No, it's Ted Budd, right? Looking forward to Ted Budd, but I'll probably say JD Vance probably will be number one for me right now. Everyone else is a close second and third. Of current senators, Hawley and Rand are a tier above everyone else for different reasons. That's true. I agree with that. But obviously, it's more of like the populist, the nationalist. I got to side with Hawley for number one. Hawley's a start. You know what I mean? Because if we didn't have him, we wouldn't even have a single person in the Senate GOP that's considered like part of like the populist Trump wing or whatever, or at least on economics and stuff like that. So it's a start. It's a start. Once we get JD Vance in there, Blake Masters, hopefully Laxalt, hopefully Bud, hopefully we'll have people who actually like truly get it, and it's not just like kind of a single issue thing that's Hawley's good on. I don't hate Hawley, I don't. Hopefully hopefully people like Vance and Masters can push Hawley to the right? Because Hawley's kind of sitting there by himself right now, so hopefully we can see that happen. So. Have you checked out the BJ Penn governor campaign? He's running as a populist. I have not, but I've heard he's running for governor. I don't even know what state, but that's funny. I remember BJ Penn because in like 2014, I had UFC 2. And all my middle school friends, his name's BJ Penn. That's how I know him. But it's funny. He's not running for governor. This guy, big stuff here. Okay. So, actually, I have one other thing I wanted to share. Okay, I was kind of debating even talking about this. Let me actually kind of get bigger on the screen here. Okay, I was debating even talking about this. I was like, well, are people going to think this is just a crazy story that I'm just schizophrenic? I probably am schizophrenic, but still, okay. let's just share this. I asked people too. I was like, should I talk about this publicly? I was like, you know what? Why not? Let's do it. Okay, let's do it. I forgot. I did want to talk about this on stream. Okay, so the other night it was like 2 in the morning or something like that. It was like 2, 3 in the morning. Like I was up late, and randomly I get this thought in my head. I've been curious for like that day about the Book of Enoch. Okay. You guys know the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is basically like the forbidden book of the Bible, right? It's supposedly written by Enoch, but every church on earth besides the Ethiopian Coptic church does not take it as scripture. And there's a lot of like weird, wacky stuff in it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like controversial stuff in it. The general view of, like I said, all but like one church on earth is that the book is fake, it's not scripture, etc. But I had this curiosity about it. Okay, it's like this is like we're getting into 3 a.m. territory of stories, but no, I'm serious about this. Okay, and let me just say that I'm being honest about this story. Okay, I'm sure some like liberal atheist one day is gonna clip this and say talk about how crazy. I don't even care. Okay, because God is real and His effect and impact in our lives absolutely is real. Okay. But anyways, so out of curiosity, it's kind of like late at night, I decided to like look up a video basically explaining the story of the Book of Enoch. Okay. And I really wasn't watching this at all with any sort of intention of like really getting schizo about it or like viewing it as like a ghost. I was genuinely just curious. I was like, I wonder what's in this book. Okay. Now I start watching this video, and the first thing it talks about in that video is like the Watchers, right? So the whole story about how angels supposedly sent. God supposedly sent angels to kind of watch over humanity, but instead the angels started having sex with human women. And those created the Nephilim, right? The giants. And at first I was like, wait a minute, what's crazy about this story? Because that's also something that's talked about in the book of Genesis, right? That's just something that I'm like, yeah, the Nephilim were real, right? That's canonically biblical. I was like, why is this book so what's so controversial about that, right? And so as I'm watching this video, I will tell this whole story. As I'm watching this video, for some reason in my head, I was like starting to get these thoughts of like, well, maybe it is real. You know what I mean? Like maybe the book of the book of Enoch is like, was real. It actually is like a true story. Maybe Enoch really wrote it. I started to like get these thoughts in my head. Okay. Now let me say, I did not end with those thoughts for reasons you're going to figure out. But I start getting like these just thoughts about it. These are not, I wasn't like creeping myself out about it or anything. I was just like, this is real. Maybe it is real. Who knows? I don't know. I was intrigued by it. I was intrigued. I was fascinated. I was curious. There kind of was like this mythological aspect of it that wanted me to almost believe that it's real because it was cool. But anyways, I start getting those thoughts in my head. Okay. And then as I'm watching this video, and I'm not joking about this. As I started to get those thoughts in my head, those questions in my head, okay, I began to feel. Again, I thought a lot about whether or not I should even share this story, but let's do it, okay? Because I'm being honest about it. I began to feel what genuinely, I don't know if it was, but it felt like a fairly like demonic presence. Like the minute those thoughts started to come in my head and grow in my head, okay. And again, I wasn't watching. It's like you could say it's just your head messing with you. It's like a ghost story at like 4 a.m. But like I wasn't even watching this with that intent or anything. I was watching out of curiosity. This feeling came out of nowhere. I wasn't like something I was trying to engineer into my head, like not a ghost story under the covers for when you're a kid or whatever. Okay, like all of a sudden, like you start to get this like very like strong anxious feeling. Like you felt like eyes were watching me. That kind of like, and like it was very strong. Like I started like I kept like looking behind me because it just like felt like just something like demonic or something was behind me or whatever. It was like it was very intense. Okay, it's very intense. Like it's just a feeling that came over me, very very strong. And then I wasn't like hallucinating necessarily, but like for some reason in my mind, I kept like envisioning like this just very like demonic face like in front of me. You know what I mean? And it's just this very strong. This is very like crazy feeling. Okay, like it was like scary. Like it felt it felt very wrong. Like all of a sudden, and it's very strong feeling. And as I kept watching the video, it just got worse and worse. Right? It was like it was getting very intense to the point where like I couldn't even like handle it anymore. And so eventually I just stopped the video. I just paused the video. And like at that moment, like it all just like dissipated, like the whole feeling. And then I just felt normal again. Okay. This is a crazy thing. It's like a crazy story. But then like, you know, the more I think about it, the more I think about like that experience, I don't know exactly what like happened there, but I really get the feeling that like, well, it's probably God telling me, yeah, that book's not scripture. You know what I mean? Because that's when those thoughts started to come out. I was like, maybe it is, right? And I started like entertaining this in my head. And then that's when you start like I felt like just forces of darkness like rushing, you know, like around me. And this is a true story. This is a true story. Like I actually talked to like Jackson about this the other night, and I was like, "Do you think I should talk about this on stream?" He's like, "Why not? You know, like go for it." And I was like, "Okay, we'll do this." But yeah, true story. You know, it's very interesting. So, like I said, I don't know if what I felt was like demons, or it might have been like just a warning from the Holy Spirit. Like I don't know how to interpret it. You know, I mean, I don't know exactly what happened, but I think it's safe to say, guys, that the book of Enoch is not legitimate. Okay, I think that's safe to say. I think that's safe to say. Okay, I mean, truly, you know. So, man, I felt a bad presence last night. Weird. It was very strong too. You know, it wasn't just a feeling of like this gut feeling. Oh, I'm a little scared. Like it felt like there were like a million eyes of like just demons like watching me. You know what I mean? It was like it was bad. And then you start to like I still remember that like face I was just seeing, and I don't know what it was, but it was bad stuff. It was some wicked stuff, truly. So, you know. I wasn't even trying to scare myself, but this is true. This is true. Real experience. Could have been a case of 3 a.m. weariness. Well, I don't think it was, because it wasn't like it was very strong. It wasn't just like me getting creeped out by like mythology or, you know, ghost stories, conspiracy theories. Like it was nothing like that, you know. And it came very strongly with me entertaining thoughts about maybe it's real, maybe it's canon, maybe it's scripture, it's, you know, spirit infused. Well, clearly not. Clearly not. So, you know, the funny thing is too is like I was also like thinking to myself, it's like, you know, I know Christ, like you demons can't hurt me or whatever's happening here, right? And like it didn't actually like stop until I stopped. My bad. People are gonna make jokes. Oh, the demon messed with your camera. No, that was my fist. That was my fist. But hold on. Let me make sure I didn't like disconnect everything else. Might have some reception problems for a second. Okay, it's back on USB, so hopefully the thing here is strong. Spiritual warfare is real. No, it is. It is. You said stop and the video stopped. No, literally, that just happened. Real. It stopped when you said I hit my like I banged like my fist on the table as I said it for the impact. That's what happened. Is the reception fine now? No, because it says it's like I know I unplugged like the Ethernet and it's back in. So is it fine? The video is still running for me. It should be fine. It should be fine. You know, demons did 719. That's gonna be the running joke. Your image is very blurry. Okay, give me a second. I'll be right back. I'll just refresh this. All right, we're back. Should be good now. Hopefully, it's good now. Hold on. I just realized I forgot to put the live thing on this live stream. Hold on. Where is that? There we go. No, right when he said the demons can't hurt me, the camera stopped. That's actually funny. That's hilarious. Vince, who is the best conservative on YouTube? Mark Dice is. Mark Dice is pretty good. I mean, I'm going to shill for John Doyle, obviously. John is a friend of ours. Great channel, great guy. But Mark Dice, I don't watch a lot of his content, but from what I've seen and heard, he's pretty good. He's good on the issues. He should definitely be up there. So, yeah. But yeah, crazy stuff. Crazy experience. Truly. Let's see what you guys are saying on it. Everyone's just talking about 719. Yeah. I get convicted about watching horror and I can't anymore. It's oppressing. Yeah, I don't know. You know, I'm not going to outwardly say like Christians can't watch that stuff or can't do that stuff, but you know, I'd definitely be careful with that, with, you know, entertaining the ideas of the occult or whatever, you know what I mean? Because truthfully, you know, the kind of the point of it is to make you think about it, make you scared about it. And sure, if you can watch it with genuinely saying it's all fake, sure. But the point of the movie is to scare you. The point of it's to put thoughts in your head. And so I really think people need to be, you know, careful about those things. The book of Enoch isn't scripture, but it seems to fill in the Genesis 6 antediluvian timeline. The origin of the giants doesn't seem demonic to me. Well, there's probably other aspects of it that are just totally off, totally fake. You know what I mean? But still, regardless, right? If I were to be, you know, entertaining thoughts that maybe it actually is scripture or it's real, you know, obviously that would not be good. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened, but I'm convinced it's not scripture. That's for sure. That's for sure to me. So, all right. Anyways, what's his name is saying, watch the Abraham Lincoln problem in the Abeville Institute. Okay, interesting. Give that a watch. We'll give that a watch. The Abraham Lincoln problem. Abraham Lincoln. Let me do this. Should we do like this or this? I don't know. Which one do people prefer? I feel like this looks more YouTube-y, but this is just you can see me better. I don't know. We'll go traditional. We'll go traditional mode here. All right.
America has a Lincoln problem. The problem is that Abraham Lincoln long ago became the image of America, but it's a false image invented more than 150 years ago by the Republican Party propaganda machine and its court historian supporters. Ever since then, this false image has been the official excuse or justification for a highly centralized government that has too often been aggressive abroad and despotic at home, just as General Robert E. Lee predicted in his famous post-war letter to the British historian Lord Acton. In his book, The Legacy of the Civil War, Robert Penn Warren wrote of how this false image of Lincoln created a, quote, treasury of virtue in the hands of the American state that, quote, justified anything and everything the state did and would do in the future, no matter how despotic. The 19th century war of genocide against the Plains Indians right after the war to prevent Southern independence.
I mean, that's very true, right? Lincoln is sort of deified to the point of just not being able to do anything wrong. And even when he did do things wrong, it's like, well, he was Lincoln, you know, he was fighting slavery, he was ending the Civil War. And, you know, definitely does create this very like good versus evil narrative when the truth is there's a lot of complex nuance to the Civil War, you know? So I agree with this video so far, but let's keep watching.
The massacre of some 200,000 Filipinos for resisting the conquest and occupation of their country, the imperialistic Spanish-American War, the foolish and disastrous American entry into World War I, and countless other acts of imperialism and despotism are all said to be virtuous by definition, no questions allowed. The real Lincoln, including his words and actions, must be forgotten, and a phony history of the man must be concocted in order to pull off this intergenerational government propaganda crusade. And what a
So
fine
true.
job the court historians, Lincoln scholars have done with this. Today, the average American knows next to nothing about Lincoln apart from the few slogans we're all taught in elementary school,
Right.
along with an avalanche of myths and superstitions.
Right.
Even the slogans are fake, however. He freed the slaves, we're taught, even though his Emancipation Proclamation only applied to, quote, rebel territory, end quote, where no slave could have been freed. It specifically exempted West Virginia, the last slave state to enter the Union during the Lincoln regime, and the parishes of Louisiana that were at the time under Union Army occupation, again, where slaves could have been freed. And it was defined as a war measure that would have ended immediately if the South re-entered the Union. He worked mightily to get the 13.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's true. I usually don't like this argument the most, if I'm being honest, because it's like, yeah, it was obviously like a strategic thing in terms of the war, but what was he going to do? Because if he abolished slavery within the Union, then the slave states in the Union would have left the Union and went to the Confederacy, and that's what he didn't want either. So I will say, like, I understand the argument, and I'm not like the Lincoln head in this. I think there are genuine good arguments to be made on both sides of the Civil War, but I will say I don't think this is the best argument that lost causers or like the pro South, pro Confederacy people should make. Like it's just not the strongest. Yes, it does debunk a certain narrative about him, but I mean it's like, again, what was he going to do, right? So you see what I'm saying?
The 13th Amendment passed that did end slavery, we're told. But this, too, is contradicted by the preeminent
Lincoln corresponded with Karl Marx. I actually did not know that, but this is a much stronger argument in favor of the South and against Lincoln than is that, in my opinion. Like, I feel like the whole Emancipation Proclamation thing, it's just not the strongest argument, honestly, in my opinion.
Scholar of the last generation, Pulitzer Prize-winning historian David Donald of Harvard. In his biography of Lincoln, David Donald wrote that not only did Lincoln barely lift a finger to get the amendment passed, he refused to help the radical Republicans procure votes for the amendment from the New Jersey delegation when they asked him for his assistance.
It's kind of a liberal argument saying the Civil War was about Lincoln being well, I agree with that. Right? Yeah, obviously not. And the truth of the matter is that if you went back to Union America, you went back to the North in 1865, as much as the liberals kind of like deify it and they say, well, it was only just because Andrew Johnson screwed up Reconstruction that America ended up still being bad in the end, right? If you went back to President Lincoln's America, to Union America, you wouldn't find a liberal utopia or dystopia, right? You'll find that it was still a very highly like conservative Christian country. And I think that part is true. And, this is kind of why I'm sort of like neutral on the Civil War entirely from a conservative perspective, because I do think that there are really like truly conservative arguments you could make on both sides of the war that, are valid and I respect. And I really can't say I really judge you either way, regardless of where you stand on it, because I think there are solid arguments to be made for both, right? Because there definitely is a view in favor of the Union that, like, you could say the South were like just these stupid libertarians and like, because it's like, it's true. It wasn't about slavery, right? For the North, especially. It's like, yeah, Lincoln didn't want to go fight the South to end slavery. He was just trying to keep the Union together. Like, that's true. But also, like, you could argue that's kind of based, right? Like, no, you're not leaving this Union, you stupid, seditionist, you secessionist. Like, get back in here, Like, yeah, it's kind of like authoritarian, but it's also kind of epic in a way, you know what I mean? But on the other hand, there's definitely a lot of arguments to be made that, like, in a way that was way bigger than slavery, the South was fighting to preserve a way of life. And I think we definitely easily understand the conservative argument from the South, too. That's why, to me, you ask me what I think of the Civil War. It's not that I really think the South was right or the North was right. I think there were nuances on both sides. And ultimately, what I see it as most is just a tragic brother war between Americans. That's how I see the Civil War, right? It's a tragedy. Americans killing Americans when they really... Let me move these lights back a little bit. Sorry. When they really just shouldn't have done it. They didn't need to do it. It's sad. It's a tragedy. It's a brother war. And like, this is how I view the Civil War, like, ultimately, And I think you could say there are aspects of both sides of the war that could be considered more morally righteous than the other side and vice versa. So, and that's the way I see it. But I mean, I definitely think it was a more complicated war than like the war for abolition. Now, that is one positive aspect of the North. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's overblown the extent to which that influenced the North's fight in the war, obviously, and the driving factor of the war, So I just think there's a lot of different nuance there.
Saved the Union, we are told. Exactly the opposite of the truth. The union of the Founding Fathers was a voluntary union of the free, independent, and sovereign states. Post-18...
I am pro-union, but I do so from a Burkean standpoint. Russell Kirk wrote a good article on the measure of Abraham Lincoln. We should actually, after this, we'll react to that. I think that'll give a good case for both sides. Watch Abe Ville's Institute's kind of like defense of the South. And yeah, I'm kind of curious of Russell Kirk's defense of the North. I think it's interesting.
The American Union was a coerced union held together by military force, much more like the Soviet Union. Lincoln's war destroyed the voluntary union of the Founding Fathers, did not save it. Americans are also taught that Lincoln launched an invasion of his own country. Keep in mind, he never admitted that secession was legitimate in order to free the slaves. But Lincoln himself and the U.S. Congress adamantly denied it. In his first inaugural address, he pledged that he had no intention whatsoever to do anything about slavery except for supporting the Corwin Amendment to the Constitution, which had just passed the House and Senate, and which would have prohibited the federal government from ever interfering with Southern slavery. I call it Lincoln's Slavery Forever speech, the War Aims resolution of the U.S. Congress, broadcast to the world that the
See, I don't really like this video, if I'm being honest. It's not because I don't think there's arguments to be made in defense of the South, because like I said, I absolutely believe that there are. But these just are not the best arguments to be made, okay? Because yes, it's like, yes, Abraham Lincoln was kind of like pro-slavery, and I guess that's true. But then it's like, okay, what utility do we actually gain from this argument? Because on one hand, the easy out is that it was optics, right? He was considered radical. Everyone thought it was radical. He's just trying to say, calm down. I'm not really against slavery. You know, it's just the same thing that JFK did or 2008 Obama. Like you could easily like draw those connections. You know what I mean? It was an optics thing more than anything else. I don't think that's like a great argument in itself. And, you know, even on the other hand, it's like, okay, well, what do we? I guess it makes the South look more legitimate, but it's like, I don't know. I just don't think this is the strongest argument. You know what I mean? I think there are a lot of arguments to be made, but these are kind of just like trying to like play gotcha with like the Unionists or whatever. You know what I mean?
The war was to save the Union and not to interfere with, quote, the domestic institutions, end quote, of the states, such as slavery. We are supposed to believe that Lincoln was a champion of racial equality, who believed that all men are created equal. But this, too, is exactly the opposite of the real Lincoln, as the collected works of Abraham Lincoln proves. There you will find him saying such things as, and these are in quotations, "What I would most desire would be the separation of the white and black races," he said. "And I, as much as Judge Douglas, am in favor of the race to which I belong having the superior position. I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races," said Lincoln. "I will to the very last stand," he said, "by the law of this state, which forbids the marrying of white people with Negroes." And Senator Douglas remarked that this government was made for the white people and not for Negroes. "Why, in point of mere fact, I think so too," said Lincoln. He made many similar pronouncements. Lincoln was also a lifelong advocate of college.
You know the problem with this? I think I figured out. You know the problem is with this video. The only case it's making, like the only case they're trying to get at, is actually, well, both sides were wrong. You know what I mean? Like, how does that vindicate the South? You see what I'm saying? You see what the problem with like the way they're approaching this? Like, I would like to hear arguments in favor of like the Southern side, not like whataboutisms of, well, here's why Abe Lincoln bad. You know what I mean? Like, we understand he wasn't perfect. We understand he had a lot of problems. And we understand that, like I said, I view the Civil War as being a nuanced issue, right? There are arguments to be made for both sides, but like, I would like to see a video basically defending the Southern cause or rationalizing or explaining the Southern cause. Like, that would intrigue me a lot more than this video. This video is basically just being like, just telling us things we already knew about Lincoln and basically just trying to be like a gotcha moment at liberals. Like, see, he wasn't the great guy you think he was. Like, what does that prove, though? Because you're still kind of you're saying, oh, well, Abe Lincoln was actually a slavery supporter and racist, but it's like, okay, but like, you're not denying those things about the South either. So like, what does that like prove to the liberals about like the lost causism or like the nobility of the Southern cause? Like, you see what I'm saying? You see what I'm like? It's not, it doesn't really, I don't think this is a very convincing video, if I'm being completely honest with you. You know, like there are ways this could have been done that could be much better and much more well done. You know, like if anything, I would argue like Monster Z's video on this on the Confederacy is way more better as a conservative. You could say at least, if not a defense, at least a rationalization, an explanation of the Southern cause and the lost cause than is this video. This video really just drops the ball, in my opinion. You know, exactly. It's just a gotcha. That's all it is. And there's no like actual defense of maybe the certain aspects of the Southern cause. Just like, well, actually, Lincoln was not a saint.
Like, or the deportation of black people. He was a manager of the Illinois Colonization Society that used tax dollars to deport the small number of free blacks from the state, funded a colonization effort while president, and was plotting to deport the freed slaves up to his dying day, as documented by the scholarly book Colonization After Emancipation by Philip Magnus and Sebastian Page.
Okay, I think we get this, guys. I think we get this. I think this whole thing is just going to be like, oh, well, here's why actually Abe Lincoln wasn't the biggest abolitionist in the world. I'm in favor of national bank, in favor of the based. Let's go.
50,000 war-related deaths, according to the latest research, and all over tax collection. Yes, tax collection. After cementing in place his ironclad support for Southern slavery, including
okay, hold on. You know what? Well, maybe we give this video a chance, because now he's kind of making the argument, well, here's what the war was really about. And this is kind of the argument that I would find interesting.
Page. Lincoln waged total war on the southern states to preserve constitutional government in America, we are told. We can only believe this if we ignore Article 3, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution that defines treason as, quote, levying war upon the United States or giving aid and comfort to their enemies. The word "their" means the states are referred to in the plural, as in the free and independent states.
Well, there you go. Now you're making a rational case defending in defense or in rationalization of the South. See, that's what you should have been doing from the beginning. But instead, they're like, actually, Abe Lincoln was the real bad guy. Okay, see, you know what? This video has a little bit of a redemption arc. See, now it's getting interesting. Now this is what I'm curious to hear, right?
Lincoln's invasion of the South was therefore the exact definition of treason in the United States Constitution. Meanwhile, he redefined treason to mean any criticism of himself and his administration. We're supposed to believe that, quote, preserving the Constitution includes such acts of the Lincoln administration as the illegal suspension of the writ of habeas corpus and the mass imprisonment of tens of thousands of northern state critics of the Lincoln administration, the shutting down of hundreds of offices.
I will say, I don't know if that's the biggest own on Lincoln. You know, I'm not saying I endorse that, but like, you know, at the same time, you can make the case that he's like, what a strong arm, like Chad of a leader, you know, like, I don't know, you know, like that's kind of a neutral for me. It's not really like a gotcha on Lincoln either, in my opinion.
In the North, the deportation of Democratic Congressman Clement Vallandigham of Ohio, Lincoln's harshest congressional critic, the issuing of an arrest warrant for the Chief Justice of the United States for the crime of saying that his suspension of habeas corpus was unconstitutional, the constitution of firearms in the border states, and a general abolition of civil liberties. We are told that Lincoln was a great statesman, when in reality he plunged the nation into the bloodiest war in American history with as many as 850,000.
Okay, now see that's a take I agree with. That's I think that's a good criticism of Lincoln, is that he really plunged America into this great tragedy, this just great horrible civil war that just didn't need to happen, and you know, damaged the United States, killed a bunch of American men, killed American boys, and even long term, you could argue, in a lot of ways made the U.S. more divided because, you know, the lost cause, Southern animosity. I mean, I know it's not as much of a thing maybe today, but really this is something that defined America, that like regional divide for, you know, something of a century, you could say. So, yeah, I think that's a strong argument. You know, finally we're getting into arguments that is like, yeah, that's a good case to be made. The Civil War was avoidable. You know, it's largely his fault that it happened. Like I think now we're getting somewhere.
According to the latest research. And all over tax collection. Yes, tax collection. After cementing in place his ironclad support for Southern slavery, including vigorous enforcement of the Fugitive Slave Act in his first inaugural address, Lincoln threatened, in his words, invasion and bloodshed in any state that refused to collect the federal tariff on imports. the rate of which had been more than doubled 2 days earlier. He, of course, kept his word. The South refused to be plundered by protectionism. Abe Lincoln was a great humanitarian as well, the court historians assure.
Again, see that now that's a case that's just there's nothing else to say about that. That's a case that strengthens the Southern cause, that strengthens the Southern argument. Finally, we got one. You know, that I'll say that. Yeah, that's a case that puts the Southern the Southern cause into better light. I can sympathize with that.
A humanitarian would not have waged total war on the civilian population of his own country, causing the death of at least 50,000 of them. A great humanitarian would not reward military generals who oversaw the pillaging, plundering, and burning of vast regions of his country in violation of international law. And
let's go. Congrats, Mole. Let's go.
Of basic morality. A great humanitarian would not be obsessed with developing larger and larger weapons of mass destruction to be used on his own country's citizens.
Okay, again, you know, this is, I don't know if that's even the strongest argument. Okay. Yes, avoid the Civil War, shouldn't have happened, shouldn't have, but yeah, it's like, yeah, but okay, I get those. But now that it did happen, it's like, oh, Abe Lincoln bad because he used like Gatling guns and cannons and this, like, what do you mean? It's war. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Like not fight the war? You know? That's a pretty weak argument. Too,
a great humanitarian would not order daily firing squads for young military conscripts who attempted to escape their forced participation in all of this, as Lincoln did. These facts about the real Lincoln are just a few of the reasons why, as historian Larry Tagg wrote in his book, The Unpopular Mr. Lincoln, the 16th president was by far the most hated and reviled of all American presidents during his lifetime. That was the opinion of virtually all who knew him or knew of him. For at least the past century and a half, Americans have been indoctrinated with a fake Wizard of Oz version of the man. The deification of Lincoln led to the deification of the presidency in general, and then to the federal government itself, not at all different from the kind of lies, myths, and superstitions that were used to solidify the powers of the Roman emperors and other tyrants throughout world history.
Okay. I mean, I'll have to give that video about a 2 out of 10. I found one argument in it compelling. I frankly found the rest to just be not convincing, you know? It was really just trying to play gotcha with the Union boys, with the Yanks, and it just didn't hit for me, you know what I mean? It's like, exactly, it's like they're portraying Lincoln as like the first American Caesar. No, exactly. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, I get a lot. They actually made him sound kind of cool, like in some ways. You know what I mean? It's true. It's true. Like it wasn't the best. Vince, next time look at Dr. Thomas Fleming. He makes a case that the South is a separate nation. He works for Chronicles magazine. Okay, well, if he works for Chronicles, I think that'll be interesting. In fact, you know, we could do that in the last 50 minutes of the stream. We'll look at Russell Kirk. So this will be more interesting. Okay. So I don't know a lot about Thomas Fleming, but I think I've heard good things. Russell Kirk, obviously someone I respect. So let's take two conservative thinkers that I legitimately respect, and you know, I take the opinions of seriously, etc., who have differing opinions on the Civil War, right, on this issue. And I think this will be more productive than this video of like, well, actually, you know, Lincoln was like Caesar, basically. It's like, okay, epic, like, you know what I mean? All right, let's do that. Fleming was the chief editors of Chronicles until 2015. I know, I don't know a lot about like what he actually wrote. So, okay. All right. Let's go. Russell Kirk. Abraham Lincoln. All right. What was the name of it? Well, hold on. What was the name of that article we were supposed to read from him? Osborne said, Lincoln destroyed the prosperity of my home, the South. That is my argument. I would want slavery gone either way, but Lincoln mercilessly destroyed people basically to prove a point. There you go. That's a good argument. That's a good conservative argument in favor of the Southern cause. Not like Oh, actually, like Lincoln, like just he was supported the same thing as like the South, but that's why the South is good, but Lincoln is bad. Like what? So, what was the name of that article? Anyone have it? They make me like Lincoln more. They make him out to be a base nationalist. No, literally. Um, is it? I have to imagine. Is it this one? Let's see. I don't know. The Measure of Abraham Lincoln. Okay, this one. All right. This will be an interesting stream or whatever. Whatever the result of the convulsion, whose first shocks were. Okay. Thank you. I would not like to donate. Okay, I appreciate it, imaginative conservative, but I would not like to donate. Okay, there would still be many. Okay. How long is this, by the way? Oh gosh, this is pretty long. Okay, we'll get through it. We'll read through this fast, okay? So James Russell Lowell wrote in his essay on Lincoln, in truth, Abraham Lincoln's election to the presidency is the great line of demarcation in the history of America. For the triumph of the North during the 4 terrible years that followed swept away American society from which a Lincoln arose, and Reconstruction, the Gilded Age, blah, 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 blah. A man very unlike Lincoln in his origins, but markedly like him in heart, Nathaniel Hawthorne, wrote in the last year of his life, the year of Gettysburg, the hurricane sweeping us all along with it, possibly into a limbo where our nation and its polity maybe literally be the fragments. Okay, hold on. Let's get in. I don't want to read this. I want just give me the case that it's okay. Here we go. From the hurricane fan conflagration of reforming enthusiasm and sinful appetite, which the Civil War became in Reconstruction, American moral and political conservatism has not yet recovered and perhaps never can. So then why is Lincoln good? What? Okay, wait. With Lincoln dead, the obligations of conservative restoration lie with the mind of the victorious North. But the Northern intellect, which practically was the New England intellect, faltered before this tremendous task, being ill-equipped for it. Okay, so you're saying the North screwed it up? The crabbed conservative strain which wound through New England character, reaching its most humane expression in Hawthorne, was in essence a conservatism of negation. After 1965, burdened with the necessity for affirmation and reconstruction, the New England mind shied and groaned and cursed at these perplexities. For years earlier, the masters of New England, not State Street men, but leaders like Charles Francis Adams and Sumner and Everett and Parker and Emerson, the men of speculation and statecraft, had been engaged in a perilous, self-righteous flirtation with radicalism, political abstraction, and the kind of fanatic equalitarianism which Garrison represented. Their conservative instincts were bewildered by the passion of this moral crusade, the Civil War, and by the influence of transcendentalism. They scarcely remembered where to look for the foundations of a conservative order, and power slipped from their grasp during the administration of Ulysses S. Grant. The ruined South in that age cannot afford the luxury of any species of thought. The nerve was strained for decades to deal hastily with exigencies, somehow to make a dismembered economy stir again in some fashion, to reconcile Negro emancipation with social stability, blah, blah, blah. Lincoln's successor, Andrew Johnson, had neither the mind nor the temper to save his country from the rapacity and folly of the age of Reconstruction, though he did all he could to realize the wise and moderate policies of Lincoln, which Lincoln had outlined. American conservatism has never recovered wholly from that blight. Today, however, the United States awakening to... Okay, so here's my problem with this. I think I basically understand the argument here, which is essentially that, like... No, well, let's see. Okay, Lincoln was a sounder conservative than Burke. What is well, hold on. Okay. As a man speaks, so is he. What is conservatism? Lincoln himself said before he was president. Is it not adherence to the old and tried against the new and untried? Okay, before he was president, though, interesting. Conservatism is that, but also a great deal more, as these two books suggest. Randall, Lincoln's most scholarly biographer, thinks of his subject as a liberal, but as Mr. Stanley pointed out in his cast of mind, his policies, and his empiricism, Lincoln was strongly conservative. And Moreover, Lincoln's original allegiance was to the Whigs, then the Conservative Party of the United States. And says Mr. Weaver, it was no accident that Lincoln became the founder of the greatest American conservative party, even if that party was debauched soon after his career. There are still okay. So basically, summing up here, the argument is essentially that, like, you know, Lincoln was a sort of conservative reformer, right? But honestly, I don't know if I find that in this whole thing entirely convincing, because I feel like the article in itself contradicts itself. Because if we are to understand the Civil War as at least partially being Lincoln's fault, okay, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of the election of him and whatnot caused it. And we also make the case that the Civil War destroyed American conservatism as, like, properly understood. Then how can we say then that Lincoln was good, even if he himself was more of like a moral conservative than his successors? Still, kind of the war that he led and he started caused the destruction, as Russell Kirk argues, of American conservatism. So honestly, I do find this kind of contradictory. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, I almost feel like this is a case against Lincoln in a way. It's kind of like a boomerang because, you know, yeah, it is true. Lincoln was a moderate Republican, and he was better than the radical Republicans in the sense that he was a more conservative, a more cautious, a more moderate reformer. He believed that was better for American society. Sure, that is true. But he also, you would say, he was a horrible statesman then, right? Because if Lincoln was basically like this guy who was sort of against slavery but wanted to do it, reform it, you know, the case that would be made is if Lincoln avoided civil war. See, if you could say he was a conservative reformer and a good one and an effective one, if he kind of led these radical Republicans who were radically anti-slavery and obviously would have and basically did lead the South to secede and start a civil war, he could be seen as an effective conservative reformer and a statesman if he was the guy who stepped in and really stopped that. He stopped that. He worked something out with the South, and he basically enacts very moderate conservative reforms and that slowly get rid of slavery and do so without wholly destroying basically half the country and having this bloody huge war, right? Instead of basically making it all fall apart like that. But clearly, Lincoln was not an effective conservative. Clearly, he was not an effective, like, moderate reformer, because if he was, we would have avoided the Civil War and basically figured this out in a peaceful way. But he didn't do that. And so in that sense, how can Lincoln be seen as an effective conservative? It's really the opposite of that, right? So I do buy the argument. I definitely do buy the first argument of this, which is that, like, the destruction of the Civil War basically, you know, in many ways you could argue just destroyed, like, conservatism and the conservative way of thought in America. And that's true. I agree with that. You know, I agree with that. And Lincoln was, you know, he did come from the Whigs, which kind of descend slightly from the Federalists, who obviously were the more conservative, less liberal party in America at the time. Like, that's all true. But the premise, I think the second premise, that Lincoln was like an effective conservative reformer, that basically just contradicts itself. Because if that was the case, then, you know, we would have avoided the Civil War that caused all these problems in the first place. Like, that much is true. And sure, if he stayed in power, maybe he would have staved off the radical Republicans. We would have gone through Reconstruction just better and more consistently. I mean, I guess. But, you know, it really, in order to make this argument, you basically have to show me that Lincoln stopped the Civil War from happening, which he didn't. You know what I mean? Well, I guess both sides are just not giving the best. You know, they're not. Like, both of these are like... It's so funny. Like, the pro-Confederate video basically makes me sympathize more with the Union, and then the pro-Union article basically, like, makes me sympathize. Actually, it doesn't even really make me sympathize with the Confederacy. It basically just makes me more anti-Lincoln, right? That's really what it does. So, he's basically arguing the radical Republicans screwed conservatism up, not Lincoln. So he's saying Lincoln's assassination hurt conservatism, not Lincoln. I mean, I understand that, and I agree with that. I do agree with that. But I think it's also important to understand what really hurt conservatism was the war itself. Yes, we would be better off if Lincoln, like, survived. Like, that much is true. But what really, I mean, really in the end, especially when you kind of look at the first part of the argument, it's basically does concede that, like, it really started with just the Civil War itself, you know? So... you know, Lincoln was not the most religious. Okay, well, there you go. Like, all right. Okay. All right. So we basically understand this one. I want to see the one last one, which is Thomas Fleming's case for the South. Thomas Fleming, South, separate nation. All right. Do you know the name of the article? Bluegrass or whoever recommended it. So, just got here. Who voted for gay marriage in the House? Of note, Liz Cheney, Nancy Mace, Elise Stefanik, and Scott Perry. Well, that one is very out of left field. Very sad. Very sad. Confederate music greater than Union music. Yeah, generally agree, although I have to say they're both good. Okay, the other thing about it is like, yeah, Southern music is good and Northern music is good too. I mean, Battle Hymn of the Republic, When Johnny Comes Marching Home, those are among some of my favorite like U.S. military songs, but so are Dixie, Southern Soldier, Bonnie Blue. You know, you really take, like I said, I see it as a tragic brother war between Americans. I think that's the correct conservative take. It's just a tragedy. Largely did not have to happen. You know, I think it might be okay. Would it be this one? The Southern Genocide. That's 50 minutes. Gosh, is there summaries? There are cliff notes here. New understanding of the Civil War. Is it this one? I don't know. Let's see. Union Dixie is cringe. No, that's true. Union Dixie is one of the worst songs ever made. I will agree with that.
And 7 and 10 p.m. Eastern, here on American History TV on C-SPAN 3.
Distinguished historian and author of more than 40 books, including several.
Idea that I was naming a disease in the public mind.
It's not that one.
I came upon this phrase a few years
Okay.
later.
Is it this one then? The Southern Genocide? 50 minutes. Where's PragerU when we need it? We just need a 5-minute PragerU video discussing this. I don't think PragerU would exactly do this video, but we need a PragerU style video, I should say. 5 minutes, just give it to us, all right? We're not watching a 50-minute speech on the stream. Wow. What an incredible intro.
Timrod anticipated the coming war. And what if mad with wrongs themselves have wrought, in their own treachery caught, by their own fears made bold, and leagued with him of old?
All right, let's do 1.5 speed. People are suggesting 2 times. We'll do 1.5.
Who long since in the limits of the north set up his evil throne and warred with God? What if both mad and blinded in their rage, our foes should fling us down their mortal gauge, and with a hostile step profane our sod? We shall not shrink, my brothers, but go forth. And go forth they did, as the threatened monuments here and throughout the South bear witness, even today. The war was lost. Perhaps it never could have been won without the foreign support the rebels of 1776 received. But the failure to maintain a Southern nation state did not automatically entail the extinction of the Southern nation. In the 100 years that followed, Appomattox Southern communities and states erected monuments. They staged reunions and commemorations all over the South. Southern writers wrote novels, poems, and histories that made the Southern case to the world in diverse ways. Just to name a few of them is to draw up a roll call of some of the finest writers in American history.
This is true. Dixieland is real. It is so true. It is in the hearts of minds. It is in hearts. Where is that written? Where is that written? It's written in the hearts of minds of the Southern people. So true. So true. That is true. That's a correct take. You know, and people try to boil down the South. Oh, it's just the Sun Belt. I'm a Sun Belt conservative. It's like that's that. I mean, I understand what that term means. It's just talking about the whole South part of the country, but the Southeast is its own place, and it's, you know, it does have its own identity, and that's true. So
Thomas Nelson Page, Joel Chandler Harris, William Faulkner, Alan Tate, Robert Penn Warren, Thomas Wolfe, Walker Percy, Eudora Welty, and Flannery O'Connor, and our late friend George Garrett. The record of Southern cultural achievement in the century following the war is so great that one might be tempted to say that in the cultural and national sense, it was the South that won the war.
This is boring. Everyone is saying our Civil War content is, everyone's getting, well, this is boring. That's boring. Okay, fine. You want me to just talk about what I think about it? Okay. All right. Modern application. I will say this, okay, in conclusion on our discussion about the Civil War. I will say one last thing, which has to do with Confederate monuments, okay? I feel like oftentimes conservatives don't fully articulate why the Confederate monuments should stay up, right? They basically retreat to this cope of like, well, our history, it's heritage. What, are you going to tear down George Washington next? And I notice oftentimes what it basically concedes is like, well, yeah, Robert E. Lee wasn't a good guy. The Confederates weren't the good guys, but we should just keep it up because history or something. And it's like, in itself, that argument is stupid. I mean, it really is. It's like, because, yeah, like Stalin is a part of history. Lenin is a part of history. We don't want statues of him up. Like, what you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. History. What does that mean? Here's the real reason why Confederate statues should stay up. They should continue to be built. And, they are truly a part of like history and heritage. And not just because history, the history. It's because the Confederacy is a part of the American story. The Confederate soldiers, it is a part of the American story. It's a part of, our heritage as a nation, and especially of the Southern heritage of the South, right? And we can only understand this correctly, again, when we understand that the Civil War was simply a tragic brother war between Americans, right? That's the problem, is when you concede to this liberal revisionist history of the Civil War that it was this black and white, right versus wrong crusade against freedom versus slavery, then like the case for defending Confederate statues is very weak. But when you understand it properly, the way I keep framing it, which is that it was a tragic brother war between Americans, and that's fundamentally what it was, and there are valid things to be said on both sides. Fine people on both sides, truly. No, but seriously, that's the way I view the American Civil War, as a brother war, a bloody, unnecessary, avoidable tragedy between brothers. Then we can rationalize why it makes sense that we honor the fallen Confederates and the heroes of the Confederacy in the same way we honor the Union, right? And really, I've tweeted this out before, but if you ever look up the casualty count of the American Civil War, you notice how high it is. It's very high. And the reason it's very high is because we count both Confederate and Union deaths as American casualties. Anyone know that? I don't know how many people realize that or know that, but we count Confederate casualties. The official U.S. government count of the Civil War includes Confederate casualties. What does that say? It says at its core, understanding, yes, this was a brother war. In the end, we view the Confederates, the South, as Americans too. And what that says is that they're just as a part of the American story, and they're just as valid of a part of the American story as was the Union. Okay? And when we understand it in that context, then it makes logical, rational sense. There's an actual reason why we ought to. It is morally okay for the South to have statues of Robert E. Lee and venerate Robert E. Lee to an extent. Under that logic, it makes sense. Under the logic that Robert E. Lee was a terrible pro-slavery, horrible guy, but leave statues up because history, that argument doesn't make sense. It's not convincing. It basically just sounds like conservatives throwing things at the wall, just going, but again, when we understand the Civil War kind of in this complex, nuanced context, and we understand that, the Confederacy is a part of not just the American story, but especially of the Southern story. And it's a valid part of the Southern story. It's something that should be discussed and talked about. You know what I mean? Then we can say, yes, this is why Stonewall Jackson should have statues. This is why Robert E. Lee should have statues. This is why, it's valid basically for Southerners to still wave the Dixie flag, the rebel flag, or the Bonnie Blue flag, right? Then it makes sense. Then it's a rational, logical case for why the South especially, it is okay for the South to embrace the Confederate, Dixie part of their heritage, just as it would be valid for people in Pennsylvania to embrace their Union sort of Yankee identity. You see what I'm saying? That's where it makes sense. You know, and this is, I mean, and the problem with conservatives is we're scared to say this, right? Because it would be controversial to say anything nice about the Confederacy or anything nuanced about the Confederacy. But understand, if you're unwilling to make this argument, then your argument for keeping the statues up makes no sense. You see what I mean? You see what I mean? You see what's kind of going on there, you know? So that's the way I see it, okay? So I honestly think that Union Dixie and the actual no, Union Dixie sucks. Union Dixie sucks. It's just it's cringe, okay? And it's such like a Reddit. I noticed it's such a Reddit tier like liberal LARP for like liberal teenagers who want to embrace right-wing meme culture but kind of use it in a liberal way. So many cringe, just liberal political science kids. They think it's a patriotic song. They like listening to that song to like own the South and own rednecks. It's cringe, and it's done in very cringe ways. Not a fan. So truly. But like to answer your question, and for that reason, like what do I think of Confederate statues? What I think of the Confederate flag? I think it's perfectly acceptable for Southerners to embrace them as a part of their culture, their history, and their heritage, because it is. But it's not just because like heritage. It's because I think it's a valid part of their heritage. It's a part of this. It's part of the story of the South. It's the part of the story of Dixieland, and it's a part of the story of the United States. You know, and that's why we should defend those things. So there you go. Again, inconvenient to say, right? Because well, Vince, you said the Confederacy weren't like the Nazis or something. You know what I mean? Like people don't like saying that. But if they're not willing to say that, then all these Confederate statues are going to be come down because they don't have any valid case to defend them. Truly. Eric Foner screwed up the historiography of the Civil War and Reconstruction unironically. Booker T. Washington gave the most base take on the Civil War, in my opinion. I don't know Booker T. Washington's take on the Civil War. Interesting. Never heard it. Americans revere Robert E. Lee, as they should. So... NBF needs his bust back in the Tennessee Capitol. Vince breaks it down once again. So true. Spot on. Yeah. Real. This is the correct take, but few are willing to say this. So anyways, back to Q&A. All right. Any questions you have, any super chats you want to send, we'll do it for about 20 more minutes here and we'll call it a night. But, again, Tampa, Florida, this Friday, link on my community tab. All right. Great event. Celebrate the relaunch of the newly rebranded American Virtue. It's going to be fun. So let's do it. I meant to say reconstruction. Yeah. I agree. Booker T. Washington was pretty based, actually. He was kind of our guy. How is the rice farm doing? Not well. The Joe Brandon inflation, okay, it's messing with my ability to grow rice. Okay, it really is. Or to sell rice, I should say. The crop is fine. But every once in a while, these guys with blue hats, they say, I think it says UN on them. And then there's some, they come in like these vests and it says WEF on them. I don't know what those abbreviations mean, but every once in a while they come and they tickle my crop. Okay. They just burn it. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Like, what is this? And I hear the song playing. I think I don't know who sings it, but I think it's like one of the members of the Beatles. And it goes like, imagine there's no heaven. Like I hear them like playing that on their way out. It's just very interesting stuff. And then when it comes to the rice that those weirdos don't take, they have, it's just very expensive to sell because of, Joe Brandon and the inflation. So it's not doing good, honestly. Will it be live streamed? Most likely. It's not our best, but we're making it. We're making by. Okay, we're doing okay, but not the best. Okay. So, I don't know. Apparently his name is John Lennon. I guess, I don't know, the blue hat guys. I don't know what that means. They're always singing it though. I don't know. They're always singing it. So I hear them whispering something about like a reset on the way out. I don't know what that means either. It's very sad. I'm just trying to grow my rice. Real, literally. These damn Democrats, okay? They just so. Do I play any instruments? No. I'm a disgrace. I'm a disgrace to like Asians. I mean, truly, I am. My mom tried to get me to play piano growing up. And trumpet too. But like I just never got into it, because you know, I never wanted to take the time to put in the dedication to learn it, and so I just never it's really never something that took off at all. So. My dad hates Imagine and JFK. If anyone, yeah, Imagine is literally John Lennon's Imagine is literally like Satanism, aka Marxism, aka Satanism, vice versa. Like just in a song, in his song, the whole song is legitimately satanic. It truly is, and it's very interesting. Like it sounds so like lovey-dovey. I mean, largely because that's how the enemy works, right? He's a deceiver. He's a deceiver. This is true. So, thoughts on the college football realignment? Sad. I don't like what's happening to the sport. It's 1984, truly. It's not good. Not good. And I'm growing of the opinion that college football was just better in the BCS era, okay? I mean, honestly, 2014, 2015, 2016, it really peaked. It's just going downhill. It's very sad. The meaningless bowl games are bad enough. Now the whole sport's just going to heck in a handbasket, truly. So, Imagine a state-endorsed Satanism. Yep. Yeah, Boise State getting cheated. This is true. All the small schools are just going to get destroyed because of this. Truly. It's just sad. It's sad. It's kind of reflective of what's happening to the world, though. We can't even enjoy the things we were able to in their pureness and just their entirety. It's like money, NIL. USC is going to go to the Big Ten because of money. It's like we can't just like enjoy this sport. It's just American society in general. I wish conservatives would talk about this, but of course you say that. You say our society is genuinely too materialistic and too driven by money. It's like, you just sound like a socialist. It's like, no, actually, that's just not the case. Like, I sound like a conservative. I sound like a Christian. I mean, this is true, like literally. So, tradition being tossed out for money. No, real, like literally. It's sad. I used to, part of the reason why I've always liked college football for so long is because it's one of the few sports I've always felt like had a soul. That's what made it different. What made it different is people weren't driven by money, and there was just authenticity to it, and just the atmospheres and things like there's just something pure about it, And now it's sad stuff. Trump brought back college football, and this is so literally the case. Okay, he brings back college football. First of all, the 2019 season, which he played a pivotal part in, appearing at the LSU Alabama game in the national championship and befriending Joe Burrow and all this stuff. Great stuff. Number one. And then, of course, in 2020, like he made college football happen. He pushed for that season to happen, and they did it. It wasn't what we wanted it to be, but at least he brought it back. And then Joe Brandon, of course, ruined college football. This is so true. My family always watched based. Mine too, by the way. Mine too. Which is weird because we're from California, but we grew up as USC fans. Okay, that's where my parents went to school and stuff. So we did have a piece of that like SEC Big Ten spirit in us out at the West Coast because we were one of the few ones who had it, and this is true. Nice studio. Thank you people are saying the studio is very popular. Is it not? It's not good. It looks epic, doesn't it? Appreciate it. Thank you guys. I'm gonna try to get a video out tomorrow, like our first video with this setup. It's cool. Red Eagle says, "What's up, Vince? What's up, King? What's up, Chad?" The most predictable yet spectacular breakdown of religious society without a government base. So true. Thoughts on why Texas A&M is going to whoop Alabama again this season? happened. Funny joke. It's not gonna happen. All right, buddy. I'm sorry to inform you. All right. Bama's coming for revenge. All right. I'm of that take. I know it's a normie take, but it's true. It's true. You guys beat them on your down year and you think you're king of the world. Chill out. All right. Chill out a little bit. Truly. The 13 Saturdays. This is so true. Andrew gets it. I didn't realize we had so many college football fans in the audience. I mean, truly big stuff, big numbers. Okay. So, Sam says, do you know anyone flying into Orlando carpooling? I honestly don't. Sorry, sadly. So I didn't realize we have so many we got a Auburn fan, A&M, big stuff, big numbers, guys. I didn't realize we had so many college football fans in the audience. That's epic. No wonder this fan base is just so cool. Truly so cool. You know. I love college football. I'm a diehard South Carolina Gamecocks fan. Wow. The SEC gang in chat. Let's go. Truly, this is sick. So, anyways. The Vols will rise again. Dude, we're getting every single SEC team represented, you know. This is true. This is impressive. This is very impressive. I didn't realize the fan base was this. We should start a college football podcast. We should start a college football podcast, okay? You know what? You guys are selling me. I don't really have the time to do it myself, but I will come on as a guest if anyone else wants to start a college football podcast, and I'll shout them out. Okay. All right. Like I said, I don't have the time to do it myself. Okay. I really don't. But someone wants to help us do it. I will guest star on it. Okay. I will. So, you know, I never understood college football as any team or league I should follow. I don't know. Where are you from again, Sam? Aren't you from like New York or something? Or not a lot up there. Just pick an SEC team and go for it. Who's the best college football quarterback of all time? Good question. Tim Tebow. Easy answer. Not a good question. Good question, but it's Tebow. No, it should dispute it all you want. It's Tebow, okay? Joe Burrow. Yeah, he's the best single season of all time. Best single season of all time. Right answer, Rami. Right answer. You're coping. Cope and see it harder. Let's go. Okay. My political ideology is best described as SEC Nash. So true. Based. Very epic. Okay. Joe Burrow has a gay opinion on abortion. Yeah, that's the best part of Tim Tebow, is it not? Not only is he the best college quarterback of all time, he's also like an unapologetic, not just a Christian, but a Christian conservative, right? He's literally like spoken at the March for Life before. Okay. Like he definitely not like retreat from this opinion or whatever. Like, what a king, what a guy, truly, what a guy. All right. This is true. King Tebow, let's go. I'm a Tim Tebow conservative. Literally. So SEC conservatism, real. The SEC caucus, okay? We have Carson Wolf. He's an Aggie fan. We have me. We have Jackson. We're both Gators fans. Who else do we have? Who else do we have in the SEC caucus? I have to think about this now. We have the fans. We've had an Auburn fan in chat. We've had, I forgot. Tennessee, South Carolina. It's real. The SEC caucus is forming. We haven't had a single Bama fan though. That's a little bit odd. Oh, Rami's LSU. So there you go. This is SEC conservatism. So true. The SEC caucus will reclaim America. Okay. Real. I'm happy Pac-12 is dying. They were so woke. Mountain West will rise. I mean, I don't know, but it's like I don't like USC in the Big Ten or Oregon in the Big 12. Like it's just all weird. I'm not a big fan. Not a big fan, truly. So, I like Joe Burrow. I really do. It was very heartbreaking for me to see him just go woke on social issues because he was literally so friendly to Trump that time they visited the White House, and I was just the biggest fan of it. But sad stuff. Sad stuff. Twitter conservatives calling for secularism makes me cringe and makes me want to be closer to God. Real, literally. Thoughts on college players getting paid for advertisements now? I don't think that's. I think that's fine as being part of NIL. Like I honestly do. I think the problem really is like all these like donors and collectives and shady like nonprofit deals. That's what I really have a problem with. I think them doing a commercial, signing autographs for money, like that's the part they should be allowed to get paid for. But we can't enforce any guardrails on it because freaking the NCAA or whatever. So it just truly. So I remember seeing an article on 530. This is so true. It's so true. It's a right-wing sport. Okay, it really is a right-wing sport. And by the way, it's a sport that like red state industries dominate. Who dominates? The college football landscape, right? It's like, first of all, the SEC. Okay, but it should also be pointed out that like the kind of like urban liberals in the South aren't the people who watch like college football. It's like the rednecks. Like it's a redneck thing. I mean, truly it is. It's like a deep South thing. Like, and if you don't believe me, look at like Tennessee fans or look at like UGA fans. Okay, those are probably the best examples in the whole country and even anywhere else, like Ole Miss, Alabama. Look at even like the frat guys there. Like you can just tell. And then who else dominates it? Clemson, okay, South Carolina, Ohio State, which is Ohio. Like this is true. This is true. It is truly it's a right-wing sport, and it's a sport dominated by right-wing markets. So this is just so true. This is real. It's literally real. It's an inherently conservative sport. Okay. Truly is. A bit ironic given that college graduates are more liberal than the general population. It's true, but like I feel like college football is centered around like, I mean, especially in college, like I don't know, it's kind of like propped up by what like kind of like Greek life culture, which is like historically is right wing. I mean, now it's just kind of like degenerate, but like the concept of it is like a right wing concept, and then just like the people who enjoy it, the people who like it. Keep this in mind too, right? Keep this in mind too. And a lot of these places where college football is so popular, these aren't like big urban centers. And that's part of the reason why it's so popular, because they don't have NFL teams, MLB teams, all this stuff. Like look at like the state of Alabama. They don't have any pro sports teams, right? So Bama and Auburn are the only thing there. That's kind of like the culture that forms around it. So this is true. SEC school started the Joe Biden chant. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. This is real. So hillbillies descend on Neyland every Saturday. So true. So true. I don't know. I was thinking of going this year to a game out there, but I don't know. I don't know if I'll come back alive. They're just going to throw bottles at Vincedao. Real. College football is epic. The fan base gets it. The fan base gets it. So true. So true. What a bunch of Chads in this audience. Truly. The SEC caucus needs to actually become a thing. We need a Confederate flag with an SEC logo in the middle as our actual logo. That would be pretty based. Okay, we can't. I could see it too. I can see it. It just looked like the Florida flag, basically, but like with the stars. That would be that. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. It's true too. The SEC caucus. Let's go. Let's go. You know, the Ole Miss band used to play Dixie. Okay, they used to play Dixie, like a slow version of it. And I guess they stopped doing it because the students wouldn't stop the chant, and the chant in the middle was "The South will rise again." Okay, which is just cancel culture. Cancel culture got an amazing tradition. Okay, truly. College football is the only sport that didn't make a big deal about visiting the Trump White House. This is true too, right? I think Clemson went there, LSU went there. They all went there. So. Let the band play Neck and Dixie. So true. So true. And Gator Bait. Coming from an SEC frat guy, we are very conservative. People, this is like, people just want to always like bash on like fraternity culture because it's just like, yeah, they have like women and drinking and all that. But it's like, I think in many ways that's in like, you know, first of all, like, yeah, they're all Republican too. So understand that it's actually a reachable cultural and political voter base. But also on top of that, like I'm not saying it's a good thing, but you can make the argument it's almost in this context of modern society, it is in a large way more traditional than Tinder and weed and vaping and like and like marijuana and all that stuff. This is true as well. You know. Frat guys are mostly barstool conservatives, and though that's my impression. Oftentimes, well, it depends where they are, honestly. But like, honestly, what's easier to reach, a barstool conservative or liberal or hippie? What do you think you're more likely to like take? Because at least the barstool conservative, even if it's a twisted, they have some sense of like masculinity and some sense of like just that Zoomer masculine energy. They're just channeling it for like destructive purposes. You know, they're just channeling it to basically just do nothing. Right? They're basically just drinking and partying and sleeping away their lives. But you know, they have it there. They have the instinct there. You know, all you got to do is drive them in the right direction, and you'll get there. You know. Think about this too. Like the idea of a fraternity. It's literally a bunch of like dudes, like, you know, who are a well-connected brotherhood together. Like if you think about it, if you really like utilize them correctly with a network and the power and just a collection of minds together, you know, what could arise out of that hypothetically could be quite strong. So Raul Gonzalez says, I support the union, but Reddit doesn't make it easy. So true. Reddit be like, oh, way down south in the land of, way down south in the land of traitors. Like that's what it is. True. The Pope supported the CSA. Surprisingly, he messaged both Jeff Davis and Robert E. Lee. That is interesting. Well, I guess, I don't know. Is it because back then did the South have more Catholics than the North back then? Because obviously the South now is like very Baptist, and like because of immigration, the North now is more Catholic. But I think like back then, right, the South would have been more Catholic than the North, right? Because the Northeast used to be very, very, very like Protestant, right, Puritan and whatnot. So maybe that's the reason why. I'm not sure though. I'm not sure. So they have the Cajuns. Yeah. Real. We'll end the stream in like 3 minutes, okay? Let's go for a few more, and then I'll call it a night. Call it a night. We got a lot of event planning to do, a lot of other stuff to do before we go to the epic State of the Movement on Friday and SAS, of course. So, you know. Google that. I don't think so. The Northeast had more Irish and Italian. Well, this would have been before Italian immigration in the 1860s. Irish, yeah, that's true. But also, doesn't the South have didn't the South have like a lot of Scottish and stuff like that? I don't know. I was just making an assumption. Okay, I really don't know. God bless you, VinceDao Buyer. Good night, Bluegrass Lover. We love Bluegrass Lover. Shout out to Bluegrass Lover, truly. So thoughts on Michigan's coach pro-life? Jim Harbaugh made a pro-life comment. I didn't hear about that. I always thought Jim Harbaugh was like a libtard. Jim Harbaugh. Pro-life. Jim Harbaugh is that? I actually never knew this. Wow. I just assumed he was like a liberal because I know he like invited Colin Kaepernick or whatever to like Michigan. I did not know that at all. Oh wow, our guy Jim Harbaugh. What a king! What a Chad! Wow, I never liked him. Jim Harbaugh nationalism. Let's go, Blue. Hail to the victors. So true. Let's go, champ. All right. Real. What a king. What a champ. I love this guy. I love him. Suddenly I like Michigan. I never really liked them before. Let's go. King. All right. Jim Harbaugh nationalism. Yeah, I'm a Jim Harbaugh nationalist. All right. It's so over for the Michigan State fans. I know we have the Michigan State caucus. We have Red Eagle, Red Lion. No, sorry. Go Blue. Let's go Blue all the way now. Truly. So you never have been as Southern as going from Alabama to the Smokies while listening to Rocky Top. Yeah, I need to do that. So the best argument to support the Union, in my opinion, is that the Unionists were the descendants of Hamiltonians. And yeah, I agree. It's just true take. Just a true take. You can't deny it. I agree with that 100%. That's why I can't fully embrace the whole the Southern pride Confederacy thing. It's not because that's just edgy or whatever. I just think it's a complicated issue. You know what I mean? Because that's also true. It is also true. But because I live in the South, I will LARP on the Southern side. Okay. And even before that, you could say I was raised in the Sun Belt. I mean, I don't know if that really counts, but but yeah. That's also true. I always say, very fine people on both sides. Truly. I mean, really. So, all right, guys, we'll end the stream here. All right. I know we usually go a little bit longer, but got a lot of stuff to do. Got to get some sleep. Got to plan out our event on Friday. So anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching. Again, you're going to SAS. You're near the Tampa Bay area. We're doing an event this Friday. For the launch event for American Virtue. Again, you can find the link to it on my community tab. Hope to see some of you guys there. And anyways, guys, see you guys later. Have a very good night. God bless. Be safe. Alpha moves only. And peace. All right. Bye, guys. If I can find the outro screen, that is.
And leaving it, I do so with this prayer. May God's grace be with you in all the days ahead.
And it's easy to be discouraged right now, but it won't defeat God's church. Be encouraged. There are thousands of prophets who have not bowed the knee to Baal. And be encouraged. At the end of the day, the bride of Christ will be defended. She will be protected. She will be preserved. And she will be restored, redeemed, and rescued by her Savior. Amen.
I guess it's time to admit it.